It's round 13 of the 2024 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship, and we are stateside. The Hankook Portland E-Prix is ready and waiting. It is on in Oregon. They're so close to one another. Oh, Jake Hughes going off onto the grass. Mitch Evans, a 5-second time penalty.
Absolutely disgraceful.
Into the lead goes Nick Cassidy. He's off onto the grass. He's lost it. What a disaster for the championship contender. 3 in the last 4 races for Antonio Felix da Costa.
Well, it's a big welcome to Portland, Oregon for the second race of this double-header weekend as Formula E reaches fever pitch. With just 3 racers left in the competition, it's Jaguar's Nick Cassidy who still leads the Drivers' Championship. It's round 14 of the FIA ABB Formula E World Championship, and qualifying is coming up. Well, they've enjoyed it that much yesterday. They've come and joined me again today. Welcome to former team principal Alain Metnish and former driver Billy Monga. I mean, it was a brilliant race that we had yesterday. Hard not to mention Antonio Felix da Costa amongst all of that. 3rd win in 4 races. He drove to perfection, really, Alan, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He understood the race. He was always in the mix. He was competitive all the way through practice and qualifying. And ultimately, I think he's had a fantastic second half to this season. He's been brilliant. And 3 wins means that he's won more races than any other driver on the grid.
Yeah, he has indeed. But it'll be hard to talk about yesterday without having a conversation about Jaguar. Tough day for both drivers. Obviously, Nick Cassidy seemed to have the championship in his hands really at one point and let it slip through. And then Mitch with the penalty, you know, in the end looked like he thought he won the race, and obviously had the 5-second penalty that shifted him down to what, 8th in the end or something like that. Tough day, all in all, for Jaguar.
Yeah, tough day in a race where they actually looked like their pace was phenomenal. At one stage, they were 1-2 in the race. OK, Mitch had that 5-second penalty to still deal with towards the end. But Nick Cassidy drove a blinding race. His strategy when he falls into the mid-back and his way that he manages energy, it really is second to none. This is the incident we're going to see here now. This is Jake Hughes and Mitch Evans. A minor contact. You could see why Mitch was so annoyed with that 5-second penalty, because it took a race win away from him at a stage in the season where that would have really pushed him right up there with Nick Cassidy, and he would have been fighting firmly for the championship at that point.
I still can't quite get my head around that, if I'm totally honest with you. On the race itself, though, Alan, did it kind of play out how you thought it may?
It did. It was certainly the pack racing that we came to expect. And, you know, there was 4-5 wide going into the first corner, also in turn 10. There was points where you really wasn't sure whether they were all going to make it out. What I didn't expect was the mistake from Cassidy right at the end. And also what I didn't expect was the likes of Jean-Eric Vergne coming from the back of the grid through to the podium. Yeah. So there was a lot of stories that were a little bit out there. The one story that wasn't was Antonio Felix da Costa, because we expected him to be quick. We expected Jaguar, but we didn't expect Jaguar to drop the ball as they did.
No, we did not. Well, let's have a look at how that's affected the Drivers' Championships, shall we? OK, despite not getting any points in yesterday's race, Jaguar's Nick Cassidy is still at the top of the table, 24 points clear of Porsche's Pascal Wehrlein. 3rd place, Mitch Evans has closed the gap on Wehrlein to just 3 after scoring 8 points in yesterday's qualifying and race. And Nissan's Oliver Rowland stays in 4th, despite not travelling to the US this weekend due to illness. In the team championship, Jaguar TCS Racing leads the pack with a healthy 55-point lead. Jaguar are looking for their first ever Formula E team championship win. Porsche currently sit in 2nd place, helped by da Costa's win here in Portland yesterday, as DS Penske are 81 points behind in 3rd. Right, let's hear the thoughts of Jaguar's team principal, James Barclay. He caught up with Radzi after yesterday's race.
Well, James Barclay, an awful lot has happened between Mitch Evans being pole sitter and the end of that race. If I could touch with you about Mitch Evans, you've just come out of the stewards. What have they said?
Yeah, so we just wanted to have a conversation to understand the reason for the decision and the logic behind the penalty. I think that, you know, our view is the penalty definitely doesn't fit the crime of that incident. It's early in the race. The drivers are expected to leave some room for each other. Also, Jake had just taken an attack mode and he was blending back in. A very, very similar incident to Sam and Pascal in China, where there was no penalty. So from our point of view, it's very important when you consider the decision, also the consequence of that decision, both for the cars involved, but also for the context, at least a chance to properly review. So the speed at which the decision was taken without the opportunity to at least have the conversation, I think for us was what we'd like to do. So to be fair, the stewards, there is a process which we can follow, and that's the process that we're going to pursue. There's too big a consequence at this point. Mitch drove a phenomenal race, managed it brilliantly, and deservedly won the race. So to not have the race win now feels like a very bitter pill to swallow. But we have to respect the decision of the stewards if their final decision is not in our favour. At the end of the day, someone has to make the decision. But we absolutely feel that is justified to have a review, considering A, the kind of racing in Formula E, and B, the precedent of similar incidents, even as recent as the last race. And I'd like to think we won today's race, and I'd like to think we have the opportunity to have the points and the trophy for that race win.
Thank you for elaborating that. You've been very diplomatic, it has to be said. You mentioned the consequence. It's not just in terms of the race in the Drivers' Champs, but also the Team Championship and the Manufacturers' Championship as well. It's far-reaching, this.
Correct, and that's why I think a decision of that magnitude shouldn't be made really quickly. It should be allowed proper consideration, proper evidence, and proper perspectives from both drivers involved. But obviously, when that decision's made in race, it absolutely affects your race strategy, right? Because now you're having to determine what you're going to do, and that's a penalty in its own right, to throw that curveball in the middle of a race. Again, with a race with such big championship consequences. So. Yes, like I said, we have to, at the end of the day, as sports people, you have to respect the ultimate decision, but there's a route in the regulations to allow us to ask for review, and it'd be wrong of us not to at least ask that to be reconsidered given the consequences.
James, if you were an option for the next general election, I'd have voted for you, my friend.
Thanks, Jazzy. Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Oh, nice touch there from Renzi. And fair play to James Barclay as well, coming out and talking after what was a really tough day for Jaguar as a whole. But on the subject of kind of appeals, let's talk about that a bit, actually, Alan. Kind of where do you stand on it? Because, they're clearly going to be doing something, it sounds like, Jaguar.
Well, first of all, you cannot appeal that particular decision. A 5-second or a 10-second penalty or a drive-through penalty during a race, it's not appealable. So therefore, it is the right of review.
Okay.
And that is a different process. Personally, I think that what James said there was actually very good. It was we want to understand and we want to actually improve the process. And so I would suspect that they will follow that through with the stewards. The stewards are very experienced. They've sit in Formula E for a long period of time. But I have to say, on their side, it's very, very difficult to be able to try to navigate it because no two incidents are the same. Yeah. And the drivers and the teams have also been pushing for harsher penalties for driving incidents. So again, in that difficult situation. But they will go through this process. I don't think the situation will change. And I think he's best now to say, right, OK, that's yesterday. Let's get on with today.
Right, that was brilliantly explained. Thank you very much for your time, Alan. Well, let's head to our commentary team now. Alan will be there, Tom Brooks will be there, and Billy Monger will be there.
Welcome along to the 14th round of the 2024 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. We're here in Portland, the second race of our double-header weekend here in the United States of America. Yesterday, we saw Antonio Felix da Costa taking his third victory of the season. That's all history, though. It's all down to qualifying now, and here is how Group A lines up. We've got Nick Cassidy and Mitch Evans, the two Jaguars fastest in practice this morning. They will go out here in Group A this morning alongside Jean-Eric Verne, Max Günther, Jake Hughes, Robin Freins, Nico Müller, Sebastian Buemi, Dan Ticktum, Jehan Daruvala, and also Lucas Di Grassi in there as well. 11 drivers ready to take to the track. In terms of how the format works for the group sessions, you've got 11 drivers, 4 will progress forwards from each of the group stages in Group A and Group B, then they'll go into the quarter-final duels, then into the semis, and then we'll have 2 drivers going head-to-head in the front row fight for pole position in the finals later on this morning. Now, Teams Championship can technically still be decided here this weekend. Jaguar TCS Racing with a 55-point cushion over Tag Heuer Porsche, but it's a fairly long shot. Anyway, the green light is on, and Group A is about to get underway as the cars filter out onto the circuit. Fairly competitive group, this one here, Billy. 2 of the Jaguars in this as well, Nick Cassidy and Mitch Evans. They were fastest in practice this morning, as I said. Surely you've got to be eyes on both of those drivers making it through.
Yeah, well, they are the main contenders for the championship, you'd go as far as saying. Mitch Evans has been really impressive this weekend here in Portland. Had the victory snatched away from him with that 5-second penalty. Also picked up the points for fastest lap and pole position, so he would have been on for a clean sweep. Both Jaguars being in the same group though, Tom, it does add that element of only 4 make it through. Jaguar have to nail this to get both cars through. Otherwise, we could see what we saw yesterday, where the championship leader, Nick Cassidy, didn't make the cut.
Yeah, exactly that. Nick Cassidy not making it through to qualifying. And, of course, 3 points on offer in that fight for pole position as well here, Alan.
That's exactly the point. It's the 3 points for pole position, which Mitch Evans picked up yesterday. If he had been able to keep the victory, then it was a clean sweep of pole position, race win and fastest lap. That didn't quite turn out, but it ultimately it allowed him to gain a little bit more in that championship fight. So he's now 4 points closer than he was at the beginning of yesterday. He's looking to do exactly the same again. I was actually quite impressed, and it was in the first sector where we saw Mitch Evans taking the time out. And that's what I would expect. He'll be quick in there. The question is, can everybody repeat it?
Yeah, exactly. We see in Formula E with these double headers, normally one day to the next, things change quite dramatically in the Formula E paddock.
It was funny when I was running the Formula E for Audi's programme, we were always super good on Saturday in double headers and won very often on a Saturday. And in the Sunday, it was just the exact opposite, and there was points where I came away not really sure why.
I was about to say, do you have any clue why that was the case?
Not 100%. I think our preparation was probably better than the rest, and it allowed them to catch up. But ultimately, it was so difficult to be able to repeat it. That's why I'm so impressed with what Jaguar have done this year. They've not only repeated it consistently through the season, they've also repeated it with 2 drivers. And to be able to get 2 drivers competitive and to be able to get a car competitive over such a wide-ranging set of circuits, you know, whether it's a street circuit, whether it's a permanent circuit like this or Monaco or something, is not easy at all.
Jaguars looking pretty handy here this weekend in terms of the envisions as well. Actually, Robin Freins onto the podium yesterday. We ride on board with the Dutchman now. 300 kilowatts of power available for the drivers in these group stages as well. Into the duels later on this morning, they get up to 350 kilowatts. Team radio.
Starting with out, prep, double push.
That definitely seems to be a strategy that they were employing in free practice 3 earlier this morning. We've got slightly cooler temperatures today than what we had yesterday, and it seemed in practice that was allowing the drivers to get 2 push laps, and the tyres were still staying throughout the entirety of that second push lap.
Yep, apt Cupra here. Nico Müller just going off to the outside of turn 11. That's where Nick Cassidy threw away the victory yesterday. Thankfully, finds the escape road on the left-hand side. Runs off onto the grass, back onto the circuit. Not too much harm done, maybe a bit of grass cut there for Nico Müller.
Yeah, it's also, he's quite fortunate it's at the beginning of his run, so he'll be doing a build-up lap and then the push. If this had been to the start of his push lap, then that would have been quite negative to his run plan.
Yeah, all okay there for Nico Müller. What about Jean-Eric Vergne as well? Podium here yesterday, his 3rd of the season. We think he's nailed on for a drive with DS Penske for next season, so no need to worry too much about that, but he'll be wanting to try and repeat a strong performance and get himself as high up as he can in qualifying. The thing is, we know that qualifying is not necessarily that relevant in terms of your finishing position for the race this afternoon, but you want to try and keep yourself out of trouble, out of harm's way in that mid-pack, especially as you head down into that first corner.
Yeah, it really, there's a bottleneck effect when you go down into turn 1 and 2. I was having a little look at some of the action from yesterday's race, and there were drivers. Sam Bird was one that I looked at. He made about 6-7 places just going down into turn 1 there. The bottleneck effect, if you get caught behind the cars in front, you're not efficient. He rolled the speed in round the outside, really made it count. I think that's a move we're going to see later on in the race today. Just looking at the lap times we're down to already in this stage of qualifying.
And double push, pace is currently a 9.6 Frins.
Well, they touched on it there, a 109.6. Actually, in the group stages of qualifying yesterday, a 109.7, which was Dan Ticktum's time, was the fastest we saw in both groups. So Robin Freins there, continuing the momentum that he built yesterday, finishing in 2nd, a strong lap.
And also Jean-Eric Vergne 2nd at the moment. He came from the back of the grid yesterday, a very difficult qualifying. Didn't make it out of the group stages, but ultimately finished on the podium.
See a side-by-side comparison here. On the left-hand side, that is Mitch Evans, man who finished 1st on the road yesterday, but was handed a 5-second time penalty for contact with the man in 4th place, Jake Hughes. as well as Nick Cassidy, of course, also ending up in the grass. And a difficult day at the office for Jaguar, but they've looked really quick here. They've looked quick in Portland in general. If you remember last year here, Envision 1, Jaguar powertrain in the back of that car. Frights and Buemi also looking pretty handy so far.
Yeah, they do. They've got it sorted out. And, you know, as you said, Envision were quick here last year. They won the race. But ultimately, all of the powertrains are going well there. There's a few powertrains as well that were maybe a bit of a surprise. The Mahindras were strong yesterday, and the App Cupras, both of them finished in the top 6.
Cassie's just jolted himself up into 4th place. But exactly as you say about the Mahindra, I was just about to touch on that. Eddie Mortara this morning was 4th in free practice. We also saw the 2 App Cupras. Nico Müller looked pretty handy yesterday as well, and they seem to have really turned a corner, quite literally.
Yeah, if it does feel that way, Tom, especially in qualifying trim. Looking at Nick Cassidy, only up to 4th, only a few hundredths separating him to Nico Müller in 5th. That's not a lap that's going to be set on getting him through into the next stages of qualifying there. He's going to have to go again on this run and potentially see a good couple of attempts of improvement, I'd suspect.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty tight in there. It's tenths of a second as we saw Hughes bouncing over the curb there at the chicane. 10 and 11 really is quite a critical point. If you get it wrong, there's no room to run wide apart from over the grass, and obviously your lap's ruined at that point.
Just looking here at Nick Cassidy. Just a word on Mitch Evans, by the way. We know that Jaguar were planning to lodge an appeal. They went to the stewards. Stewards have decided that they're going to keep the penalty as it was for yesterday. That 5 seconds won't be overturned.
They cannot appeal that penalty. That particular penalty is stipulated in the regulations that a 5-second penalty or a 10-second penalty or a drive-through cannot be appealed.
Right.
There's a right of review where you can go and review it, but you cannot appeal it. So therefore, that stays as it is.
Yeah, so no further changes then for Mitch Evans. 8th is where he's classified from round 13 yesterday.
And to some extent, you know, from a mental point of view, it's good to say, right, put a line in the sand. That's what it is. Now we've got to go again. He did still pull out 8th. He still pulled out pole. He still got fastest lap. And as much as I know the trophy's not going to be sitting on his mantelpiece, it was still a very, very strong weekend by Mitch Evans. The thing that has been the turning point is that could have swung his championship challenge away.
But what won't help and what will add to the mental woes of Mitch Evans, the pace that he's set so far. He's down in 7th. He's not close. He's about a 10th away from his teammate Nick Cassidy. We're talking small margins in Formula E, but he needs to deliver. There's going to be pressure on this second run now.
It's interesting on the different run plans you can see here between the different drivers as well, because you've got Vern, Muller and Ticktum all in the pits. They're sort of waiting for a last gasp attempt to go out onto the track. The problem that creates, though, Billy, is if you see another driver ending up in the barrier or they create a yellow flag and you've only got one flying lap, then that can completely ruin your run and your opportunity to get to the duels.
Yeah, you have to put a lot of faith in other drivers, making sure, like you say, there's no yellow flags, no people having moments which disrupts your run plan. That's why someone like a Robin Fryans, who's got that banker lap in, he can now be a little bit, there's less pressure on his shoulders that if something happens in this later stages of group qualifying, he'll be there and he knows he's set a lap good enough to get him through already.
One interesting point Saunders has brought up is that the Jaguar customer team actually could be partly determining whether the Jaguar team get through into the next section of the duels, because right now we've got Frins but also Buemi in there, and that effectively is going to put Cassidy right on the bubble, as you mentioned, but also it's going to be a bit of a tougher run for Mitch Evans. But knowing the way they run this, even although they're running the same powertrain, they actually allow them to compete and have to allow them to compete without any sort of team structured orders.
Personal best sector times coming in here. Mitch Evans, personal best for him in the first sector. Dropped a bit of time in the second sector. It should be an improvement, though, for the Kiwi as he comes to the timing line. Goes up the third quickest and makes his way into the duels as it stands for now. But 2 minutes left to go as Cassidy then improves, puts his teammate on to the bubble. James Barkley here watching on, hoping that both of his boys are going to be able to make the cut. What about Robin Fryans? Can he improve? Won't be an improvement on this time around. He's just building himself up for another flying lap. 2 minutes left of this session. He's got 2 more opportunities.
Yeah, that was a build lap, so I expect to see 2 push laps there from Robin Fryans coming up if the run plan is similar to what they did at the start of this group qualifying.
The one driver I'm quite surprised about is Hughes down in 8th place. Now, this was a guy that was on the front row of the grid yesterday and was super competitive, winner of pole position, I think it was in Shanghai.
Yep.
And so, you know, he's really got the momentum behind him, but at the moment it's not quite clicking together with 1 minute 42 seconds to go.
Yeah, it seems a little bit more dead cert for the Jaguars at this stage of the session, but still a minute and 35 to go. As I say that, Evans gets knocked out by Sebastian Buemi, who just slots himself up into 4th place. Now the fastest sector times are coming in. Jehan Daruvula has gone fastest overall in the Maserati. His teammate Max Günther right behind him as well. The Stellantis power cars, the Maseratis and the DS Penske's to a certain extent in qualifying trim, haven't been the fastest cars so far this weekend.
This is definitely a preparation final corner and a big push lap now coming across the line. This is to open up the lap.
This will be his final flying lap here for Mitch Evans, and the problem for him is that he's not going to be the last driver to cross the line. There's a good possibility with drivers behind him out on the circuit that they could improve, and he might be left a little bit anxious at the end of the session here, Mitch Evans. We ride on board with him through turns 1 and 2 as Daruvula goes up into 3rd quickest. Muller improves but only goes 5th fastest at the moment, so times are now beginning to tumble and the timing screens are lighting up here in the commentary box.
A bit of turning over steer there for Mitch Evans as he rolled the car in. Not too bad, but it's just on the limit. Now he sits into some understeer as he comes out to the really tight turn 7.
Jake Hughes making his way up into 4th as well. The margins are so tight. 3.5 tenths cover the entire 11 cars in this Group A.
8th Evans is at the moment. Cassidy's just popped himself into 2nd and also done the fastest first sector of anybody.
Yeah, Cassidy looking really handy here. We ride on board though with Evans as he makes his way down into turns 10 and 11. This is his final opportunity. Needs to leave nothing on the table. Bit of rear instability through the left-hander. Just a couple more corners remaining though for the Kiwi to progress forwards. Of course, it was pole position 24 hours ago. Needs to get forwards into the duels as he comes to the timing line. Can Evans do it as he takes the checkered flag? He can, but only 4th fastest. He's right on the bubble, and there's a lot of personal best sector times coming in further behind as well. Cassidy stays 2nd quickest, Frines fastest, and Verne goes into 2nd. Evans is out of qualifying in the group stages. So, what a difference a day makes for Mitch Evans 24 hours after he took pole position, and he doesn't make it through. Hughes goes into 4th in the dying stages as well and cements himself as one of the best qualifiers of the season so far to get into the duels once again, knocking Jehan Daruvula out of contention. But can anybody else improve? Personal best sector times coming in at the end of this one. Ticktum's a couple of tenths of a second shy. Don't think he's going to do anything to upset the drivers in front of him. Indeed, he doesn't. He stays 9th quickest. So there we are. It's Robin Frines, Jean-Eric Verne, Nick Cassidy and Jake Hughes who make it through. Mitch Evans, who started on pole position here on Saturday, is out of qualifying in Group A.
First 5 covered by less than 1/10 of a second. Robin Frines, though, it was his first quali run. It was his first banker, as we said, that was quick enough to go in.
Don't know where we're on. It's half a tenth to the cutoff to before.
Incredibly tight margins here in Formula E. Mitch Evans, the big shock, out of qualifying in the group stages. So Robin Frines, Jean-Eric Verne, Nick Cassidy and Jake Hughes will go through from Group A. There'll be another 11 drivers out on track for Group B in a few moments' time. Jean-Eric Verne continuing his form of the weekend. I mentioned earlier on the DS Penske and Maserati, Stellantis power cars haven't been that quick in qualifying. Well, Jean-Eric Verne completely disproving my theory there, Billy, because Verne's looking pretty handy so far here this morning.
Yeah, he really managed to pull a lap out of the bag there. The margins so tight, 2 tenths between the top 9. Dan Ticktum was fastest in the group stage of qualifying yesterday. He finds himself down in 9th and with real work to do in the race.
There's 0.003 of a second separating Hughes and Daruvula in terms of their lap time. That was the cut-off between making it into the duels and being out in the group stages. How close do you want it? 0.003 of a second, if you want to put that in relative terms, that's about the width of your wallet, isn't it? But, Alan?
Yep, P3. 83, mate. Well done. Nice one. Super close.
Okay.
Top 5.
Sorry.
Top 6 within a 10th.
Good for Nick Cassidy.
Yeah, it wasn't good enough on my standards. Sorry. Good to go through.
Good enough for the timing screen, so well done, mate.
Sorry for interrupting you there, Nick. Didn't mean to. But makes it through into the duels then, and cements himself with a possibility of getting those 3 points in qualifying here this morning. So Robin Freins, Jean-Eric Vergne, Nick Cassidy and Jake Hughes are the 4 drivers that go forwards from Group A. We say goodbye to Jehan Daruvala, Mitch Evans, Nico Müller, Sebastian Buemi, Dan Ticktum, Lucas de Grassi and Maximilian Günther down there in 11th and last place in that session. A lot of work for the Maserati driver to do here ahead of the E-Prix this afternoon. Well, the sun is beginning to come out. It's starting to get a little bit warmer, but certainly not as warm as it was here yesterday at this particular time. Just a notice on a timing screen that's come up. Sebastian Buemi under investigation for a technical infraction. So possibility of a little bit of a late upset here for Buemi. Didn't make it forwards into the duels, but nonetheless, something for him to consider.
Well, yeah, they go through a scrutinizing process. So it could be something coming up from that.
Absolutely. Cracking qualifying performance from Jehan Daruvala, 0.003 of a second though, denying him the possibility of getting into the duels.
Where did he pull that qualifying out? Especially Sector 1. He suddenly lit up Sector 1 as a purple sector. And that's actually the one that is super difficult because it's a long combined corners. And I wouldn't have said the Maserati was strong yesterday, so certainly he's pulled something out of the bag over now.
Yeah, he's really managed to pick a good sector out there, and that set up his lap nicely when you compare it to his teammate who was last in that Group A.
Group B then, Pascal Wehrlein, Jake Dennis, Antonio Felix da Costa, Stoffel van Dorn, Sam Bird, Norman Nato, Sacha Fenestraz, Eduardo Mortara, Sergio Sette Camara, Nick de Vries and Caio Collet, the rookie, making his debut replacing Oliver Rowland here this weekend. This is going to be a bit of a tricky one to call. Da Costa, we know he's pretty handy. We know that Van Dorn on his day can pull something out of the bag.
What, you mean Da Costa's pretty handy? Winner of the last 3 out of 4 races.
I like to keep it nice and understated, Alan. Don't know about you. Anyway, green light is on at the end of pit lane. Group B qualifying, a 12-minute session about to get underway as the cars filter out onto the track in a bit of a Noah's Ark formation. The 2 Porsches leading the 2 Andrettis. You've also got the 2 Nissans of Fenestraz and Collet in this one as well.
Yeah, Sam Bird sitting off the back there.
Fresh off the back of the top 10 result and his first points in a short while, actually, after missing a few rounds. Here is Jake Hughes, his teammate. We just saw him progressing forwards into the duels by the skin of his teeth. 0.003 of a second quicker than Jehan Daruvala.
It's so hard to explain what 0.003 of a second looks like. It's next to nothing.
Yeah, it's so tight. So let's have a look and see what's going to happen in this session. We've got the 2 Andrettis out on track at the moment. Jake Dennis, he's not had the best of weekends so far, to keep it pretty light, actually, in terms of his qualifying performance. In fact, the best of seasons, I think it's fair to say. Really.
Well, last year he was dominant. It was a very, very strong run in the championship and everything worked for him. And this year it's sort of not quite clicked into place. They struggled a little bit, I think, with the upgrades on the car over the winter. And now they've kind of got it sorted out. But it's Norman Nato, his teammate, who is fighting for his seat, one, but also is the one that seems to have, I would say, just more of a connection with this circuit and the car on this circuit at the moment.
Yeah, he's been great, Norman has, since the start of the weekend. I got a couple of laps in with the safety car with him on Friday, and he just seemed really cool, calm, collected. I mean, I think that is the nature of the driver and the man himself, but I think with the circuit we've got here, long apex corners, you need to have that flowy nature to your driving. You don't want to be stabbing at the wheel through the first sector in particular.
And this is the first sector now, as we see Da Costa coming down into it. Yesterday's winner already somebody wide at turn 1.
This is what I was wondering about, actually, in terms of the session as well. You know, sector 1, we've got really a lot of cars out on track in a very confined sort of area, and you can see them all very close to one another, and there's a good possibility they may hit a bit of traffic in the latter stages of this session. So something worth keeping an eye on. It looks like a bit of a car park down there at the first couple of corners. Billy, do you think that this first sector is going to be where the lap time is lost or won?
Well, it's so hard to say, Tom, because the margins are so tight across the whole lap. It seems like a couple of temps, you know, separating 9 drivers in the first Group A qualifying, but judging it from yesterday, yes, the first sector is where the driver can have more of an influence, I'd go as far as saying.
I would actually also put it maybe slightly differently. The first sector is where you could lose the lap, because actually it's very tricky and it's quite easy to get an oversteer as you're turning into that sort of 4, and then as it tightens up into 5, as we see Da Costa just coming through that first chicane and now coming down to that point. And I think there, if you're not quick here, then you're chasing for the rest of the lap. And then you've got to take a big stab at turn 10, the chicane, to try and gain it back.
Just a notice coming up on the timing screen. Well, I was mentioning about Buemi being under investigation for a technical infraction. He's had laps 6 to 9 deleted for that technical infraction from Group A. Here's Da Costa exploring the runoff.
And Da Costa there going over the curb, just going in, missing the apex, and then bouncing right over the middle of the car. Yeah, sometimes you're better to abort the corner earlier as opposed to make it, but he was actually in the point where he thought, oh, maybe I can still get it back. And that'll put quite a shock through the floor of the car, and they'll be lifting it up just to have a little look underneath, I'm sure, when they come in for the pits to make sure there's nothing broken.
So 8 minutes to go. What we're expecting the drivers to do, they go out, they do their first run, they'll come back in, stick another set of tyres on the car, which will be a little bit cooler. Then they'll go out and do their final runs in the session. The thing is, do they opt to do 1 push lap or 2 push laps? In Group A, we saw generally 2 push laps, but yeah, I reckon it'll be much the same as well.
And there we saw, as we're watching Dennis Nato getting well out of the way there, I think he could have even been on the grass at one point.
So across the timing line then comes Jake Dennis, goes up into 5th fastest at the moment, just ahead of Caio Collet. De Vries also improving in the Mahindra. Mahindra not looking too bad. Somebody's off onto the runoff in the background there. It looked like almost they were on the drag strip at that particular point of the circuit. No such things to worry about though further up the order, as we ride on board here with Norman Nato, currently the slowest of the drivers, but he's not been able to set a representative lap time. The thing is, he's got a fair bit of traffic in front of him all up the road, these cars on their build laps as well.
And his teammate Da Costa's just put in the fastest first sector of anyone on 26.9, and also his personal best. This is why Nato hasn't set a time, because in fact there's 2 cars that have went off there.
Yeah, Nato and one of the Nissans. Was that Colette or Fenestra? It's difficult to tell. Well, it was Colette.
Nato went off here, turned in a little bit, turned in a bit too early, then ran wide, went off. And I think Colette then followed him off. He distracted by seeing a car in front of him and sort of follow the leader type of thing. That's where you saw the other car coming down the back. And I had seen Nato coming back onto the circuit.
Well, as Van Dorn improves up to the fastest time we've seen in this session, the other 3 drivers that are into the duels at this stage, all back into the pit lane. Dennis improves, goes up into 2nd quickest at the moment. That time's a little bit more spread out at this stage in the session. Jay Penske, I think that's the first time I've ever seen his eyes. He's always had a pair of shades on.
Yeah, just looking at the times though, Da Costa with the fastest first, he didn't finish the lap there, he's gone into the pit. And so he would have definitely stuck himself, I think, into the top 4 if he had finished the lap.
And just a bit of context, in comparison to Group A, which was, we thought, a super competitive group in terms of the personnel in that part of qualifying. A 109.6 was the fastest. A couple temps was down in 9th in that group. Basically, 9th place in Group A was faster than any of the lap times we've seen in this part of qualifying. So I still expect the times to come down.
Yeah. And it was a 9.6 in the first part of Group A that Robin Frins had done, which was ultimately the quickest time.
So looking here at Stoffel Van Dorn as he comes back into the pit lane then. Jake Dennis will likely be following him back into the box as well to get ready for his 2nd and final run in this session. 5 minutes left on the clock here.
And everybody now is in the pit lane. There's not one car on circuit, but that will be turning quickly. There you can see the grass being dragged out of Norman Nato's car.
Yeah, he's done a good job of mowing the lawn here for Portland, so that'll save them a few quid. As we look at Dennis coming back into the box as well. Easy way to distinguish between those 2 drivers, by the way. White halo for Jake Dennis, black halo for Norman Nato. Special livery on the car here this weekend as well. Stars and stripes, of course, home race for Andretti.
You've got to be fairly happy for Jake Dennis right now, considering the form that he's had around Portland, especially yesterday. He didn't have any pace in that car, but he's currently getting through into the duels. So, promising start to the day for him. I expect the order to change quite significantly in the next run, but it suggests that he might have a little bit more to show than yesterday.
Another person, Pascal Wehrlein, sitting there in 3rd place, admittedly a 10th and a bit off pole position so far. That's Van Dorn. But Wehrlein, at least as we stand at the moment, should be progressing through.
Jaguar Porsche need a stronger end to the weekend here as well, with both drivers ideally on the podium to keep their team's championship hopes alive. 55 points the advantage that Jaguar has over them at the moment. Essentially, you've got 94 points available on offer in London, so they need to finish 95 points ahead at the end of this weekend in order to be crowned the team's champions. It's a long shot for it to be done, but anything can happen in Formula E, as we well know.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily sitting on the driver's mind at all. It will be on James Markley's mind, and it will be on Florian Modlinger's. But from a driver's perspective, they're looking to try and maximise everything that they can for their own personal championship chances.
Interesting, looking at the virtual race engineer there, a 109.8 needed to reach the duels, it's saying, which means everyone needs to go faster.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, you can see it's now a flurry of activity out on track with 3 minutes remaining. They'll be trying to find space. We heard Scott Elkins, race director, talking to the drivers yesterday, and it almost sounded like a disappointed dad.
But the McLaren behind is going to build next lap. We expect cars around to build next lap.
Well, let them know that I'm pushing.
So just explaining what's going on there for Fenestrad. So he's on a bit of a different run plan. He's decided to go and get that banker lap time in because, as I mentioned earlier on, there's a possibility that you could get a yellow flag at the end of this session. And if Fenestrad has got that banker lap time in already, it keeps him safe.
Yeah, but the worrying thing for me is he's got traffic coming up ahead of him. So if you're looking to be different on your strategy, you don't want to be in a position where you're compromised by 3 cars up ahead. Yep. Especially now coming into the corner section where it's, even if they move out of the way, you actually have just got your eyes sort of caught up against them.
Yeah, not the easiest set of circumstances for Fenestrad to negotiate here. He's got Sam Bird just up in front of him in the neon McLaren. And you can see it's costing him time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. His first sector is nowhere.
Yeah, making his way through. So Fenestrad then just going to try and build it up. You can see where it funnels down. This is where we saw contact between Hughes and Evans in the race yesterday, which is what gave Hughes a puncher and Evans a 5-second penalty. Down the back straight we go. This is threading the eye of a needle at 130 odd miles an hour or so as you flick it through that left-hander for Sasha Fenestrad into the final corner. The Jaguar Porsche just up the road in front of him as well. That's Antonio Felix da Costa. To come across the timing line. And Fenestrad then improves in the final sector, but doesn't improve overall in terms of his lap time. Da Costa, though, does improve. Goes up to the fastest time in this session. What about Fenestrad's teammate, Caio Collet? This is what happened earlier on in the session, isn't it? So it was Collet and Norman Nato that went off.
Yeah, we remember seeing the Andretti mechanics picking out some grass.
I wonder if that might have just balked the Mahindra there as well.
I think he probably did a little bit, but it wasn't as if it was an unsafe return onto the circuit here, as we're now on with the Mahindra, Edo Mortara, and he comes through, and yeah, it definitely did balk him, there's no question.
Yeah.
Right now, Nato is actually just on a flyer of a lap because he's just done his personal best, in fact, the best overall first sector.
Yeah, we'll pick the bones out of that one a little bit later on. For now, let's focus on the timing screens then. So 1 minute left of the session. Final flying lap times about to come in. Nato was fastest overall in the first sector. Dropped a bit of time, though, in sector number 2. On board we ride here with Stoffel Van Dorn. Second quickest currently, a 10.5 away from Antonio Felix da Costa as we come to the timing line. Don't think it's going to be an improvement. Indeed, it's not, but he's got one more bite at the cherry. De Vries is on a bit of a hot one as well. Nato goes up into 4th quickest as well. Knocks Verline out. De Vries goes into 3rd fastest now as well. The lap times are really beginning to come in at the end of this session. Sete Camera improves. Bird improves. Not enough, though, to get into the duels. Collet going faster as well. What about Antonio Felix da Costa? We ride on board with him. Quickest man currently. Can he go quicker than a 109.758 as he comes to the line? Not this time around.
No, but he's got one more lap to go, and right behind him is Pascal Verline as well. Verline is 7th as we speak, and so Verline has crossed the line. He's got to deliver something on this lap or he's not going to be making it through. Here we are talking about Da Costa, who has actually won 3 out of the last 4. Verline, his teammate, is fighting for the title.
You can hear the tyres chirping in pain there as Da Costa's trying to extract the maximum. Doesn't improve in that first sector, and it's a little bit slower relatively compared to those around him. Snap of oversteer there as we ride on board here with Stoffel Van Dorn in the DS Penske, trying to extract the maximum from his car, guarantee a place into the duels as he comes out of the final corner and across the timing line. Second quickest he is at the moment. Can he improve in time and solidify his position? He can. Oh, off has gone Dennis. That's the yellow flag we were talking about. That's going to compromise everybody else behind them as well. Jake Dennis has thrown it away. He's currently through, but not for long, because Fenestrad has gone up into 4th quickest. Bird goes 2nd fastest as well. Sete Camera improves. What about Pascal Verline, though? The championship challenger. As we look at Dennis making his way back into the pit lane. The rest of the drivers coming to the timing line. line. Da Costa not going to improve. Verline, 10th quickest at the moment. As he comes to the timing line, does he improve and get into the duels? He does! Up into 4th place, knocks out Stoffel Van Dorn right in the dying stages of the session. And a sweep of the brow there, I'm sure, for Florian Modlinger. A lot of pressure on both his boys' shoulders, but Da Costa and Verline making the cut.
Yeah, he did make the cut there. I think there's going to be probably a few people looking at the yellow flag because there's a flurry of drivers. Bird, De Vries, Van Dorn made their time up when we saw that Dennis was actually sitting on the grass, and normally there's a yellow flag at that point. However, that'll have to be reviewed.
And Pascal P4, both cars through. Good job.
Yeah, phenomenal there from Antonio Felix da Costa and for Pascal Verline. Pressure on both of them, their shoulders. Sam Bird and Nick De Vries also making it through in that session. Jake Dennis and Norman Nato, Andretti's home race, 9th and 10th they were classified at the checkered flag, which is not the way they would have wanted to have ended that session, especially here, Billy, for their home race.
Yeah, really a not ideal situation there, because Jake Dennis in the first run, sitting in second, it looked like they had a turnaround in form, which they've tended to do at double headers in previous races.
Let's have a look through turn 11, classic case, loses the rear just going over the curb, straight off onto the grass. Thankfully, there's a fair amount of runoff there, and he doesn't go into the wall. Let's have another look. So, gets a snap of oversteer through 10, carries it wide through 11, clatters the curb, and it kicks back the other way.
Yeah, slightly different incident to what we've seen at 10 and 11 earlier in this weekend.
They improved into yellows now. Didn't see any yellows there.
So I was saying that there was a possibility of the yellow flag coming out of this one, and I mentioned it right in the dying stage of that session, but race engineer saying that he didn't see any yellows.
Yeah, the incident obviously happened, but if the yellow flag wasn't out, that's where the technicality comes into it.
Devil's advocate, he was so far away from the circuit, was he out of harm's way?
Yeah, like I said, the incident that we just saw there with Jake is very different to where other drivers have ended up having a similar sort of incident at 10 and 11. So for me, I think those improvements will stand. The lap times in that second group, though, not faster than Group A. So as it stands, Robin Freins in the group stages of qualifying, he has the fastest time. He's carried that momentum that we saw yesterday. Porsche as a manufacturer getting 2 cars through into the duels, doing what Jaguar couldn't do in Group A.
So Group B qualifying then, Antonio Felix da Costa, Sam Bird, Nick De Vries and Pascal Verline are the 4 drivers that go forward. Stoffel Van Dorn does not, likewise Eder Mortara, Sasha Fenestraz, and crucially the 2 Andrettis, Jake Dennis, Norman Nato, not performing here this morning. They are out of qualifying. Kyle Collette down there in 11th place as well. Just 0.3 of a second separating 11 drivers, but certainly a slower group in Group B compared to Group A. It's all eyes, though, on the duels. The quarterfinals coming up here in a few moments' time in Portland.
Well, there we have it. Groups A and B have both gone out. Antonio Felix da Costa there, continuing his form in Group B. We'll get into that into a minute. But yeah, just different day, and I expected something different with Mitch Evans in particular, but it just didn't quite happen for him in Group A, did it?
It's so small, the margins between getting it right and getting it wrong. You know, in that Group A, I think it was less than a tenth for the first 5 cars.
Yeah.
And you always get people improving overnight, so if you don't get it super spot on, then you are out. Now, we know for the championship, he wanted those 3 points. For the race, he's in a good position. I don't think there's a problem there, but it's just a little bit up in its end, which is a good thing.
Any surprises in there for you?
Honestly, Mitch being knocked out is, of course, a surprise. I think Nick getting through, bouncing back from yesterday has got to feel good for him, but it's exactly as Alan said, just such small margins, and these cars aren't that easy to dance on that sort of fine line on the limit, so the difference between getting it right and wrong, as Alan said, is so small. Yeah,
I've got to talk about Robin Freins as well. I heard you talking about he got his lap done early as well. Had a good race yesterday, and he's showing good form again today.
Yeah, he's you know, I think he's got his chest out, Robin. He felt good yesterday. The team felt a little bit better. They were more confident coming into this weekend. And ultimately, you know, he did a very good race yesterday. And right from the free practice this morning, he was at the front and then delivered it straight away. And that shows confidence to me. Yeah. If you can go out to the pits in qualifying, it not necessarily have to build it up. But if you can just deliver that time, then it takes the pressure off. Yeah. Because it's not like your last laps where you're really struggling and hoping, you know, there's no yellow flags, hoping you don't have traffic, and he controlled it.
He did indeed. Well, that's exactly what Robin Freins did, and he is, Sylvain Philippe is actually with Redzi, his team principal.
Vision Racing, Sylvain Philippe. Sylvain, first of all, once again, Robin Freins, all of a sudden, finding form at the business end of the season.
Yeah, we found a good setup. I mean, as you know, all this year, as I've been saying, it's been really tight. We've missed a 10th or 2 in quali the last few races, which last year would have been good for the duels, but this year is not. So, yeah, very competitive field. So we work really hard, trying to find, little things here and there that basically get us that 10th or 2, and ultimately makes the difference.
One lap time's one thing, but converting it to race, as he did yesterday, the first podium of the season, what does that do to the team?
Oh, it feels good, you know. We are not, obviously we won the championship last year, and even when we didn't in previous years, we are used to be consistent and be on the podium a lot, so this drought of a few months without podium was pretty hard to take. So it's nice for the team to know that, you know, we still know how to do it. We have good process and systems in place. But as I keep saying, it's very competitive at the moment. So, you know, being there, everything has to align, but it makes it also very special.
It is special indeed. Hopefully the duels will be special. Good luck today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Redzi. Okay, stick with us. We've got the quarterfinals coming up, and we'll also have analysis of Group B coming up after this short break.
Portland is the 4th city in the United States to host Formula E after Miami, Long Beach and most notably New York. The Big Apple's doubleheader in Season 8 was particularly memorable. In round 11 of Season 8, Nick Cassidy started at the front of the grid. Could the Kiwi finally convert pole into a maiden E-Prix win? He led for most of the race, but the heavens opened and the mayhem ensued.
I mean, you can't see it. Oh, Mortara! Eduardo Mortara, the championship leader, has aquaplaned off. Oh, they're all off. They're all off.
Every one of them.
There's 4 cars off, isn't there? Down at turn 6.
I saw an Envision.
Yes, Cassidy is in. I think Freins is going. Oh dear, it's wet. Evans having to take evasive action. Less than 8 minutes plus a lap to go, and Cassidy is in there, and Van Dorn is in there as well.
Okay, attention all teams, this is race control. The race will not resume. According to the regulations, we go back to the penultimate lap prior to the red flag.
Nick Cassidy wins his first race in the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. What a roller coaster of emotions. Cassidy can't believe it.
The drama continued the next day straight from lights out.
And we go green in New York City, and it's a slow start for Lotterer. He finally manages to get away, but Antonio Felix da Costa has a huge lead.
Da Costa surged ahead, and those behind him were caught unawares down the straight to turn 6. First, Mitch Evans.
Evans to the inside. Oh, he's lost it. Oh, Evans to the Jaguar, spins.
Oh, well held.
Keeps it together. Only falls down into 5th position, so doesn't actually lose any places. What a remarkable bit of driving from Evans, but he hit a big bump on the inside of the corner.
Absolutely right. I'm sure nobody's been there. They might have noted it in track walk, but well held, Mitch Evans. Watch this as he moves over. De Vries moves over to defend from him. He hits the bump. Wow, wheels, all 4 wheels off the ground.
Well, that's unreal.
Well held. I mean, stunning piece of driving.
Next was Nick De Vries.
Every time since De Vries goes for it now, De Vries does the same thing! And he's straight on and Evans is through.
You'd have thought the team would have said, by the way, there's a cracking great bump on the inside into 6.
With just 1 minute on the clock, the track resembled a parking lot. courtesy of Luke Degrassi.
And Degrassi's trying to reverse out of the way, crunches against Buemi, and this is a bit of a traffic jam here.
This provided Da Costa with smooth sailing across the finish line.
The checker flag falls for the first time this season. Da Costa and Diaz Tejita win on the streets of New York City.
Right, let's have a quick word on Group B before we go back to the quarterfinals. Jamie, Pascal Wehrlein, he left it right to the end, but he got the job done.
He did. A bit risky as well there. Obviously, we saw Jake Dennis going off, pulling out a yellow flag, and if you leave it to the very end, you leave yourself vulnerable, but he got it done, and yeah, that's kind of irrelevant now. He's into the duels, and that's got to be what he's focused on.
Well, Porsche will be absolutely delighted that he did make it to the duels. He's going to be facing his teammate, Antonio Felix da Costa, which makes it very interesting for Florian Modlinger.
Yeah, I know. At the end of the day, you know, you don't know which one you want to go through, but you've got the positive that you know you're definitely taking one of your drivers through into the next stage. You know, for Pascal, he needs to have a good race weekend, race today. He needs to actually get some big points to try to give himself a chance when he comes into London, because you do know that Cassidy already has got a 24-point gap, but also he's going to be super competitive today.
Yeah, and he already kind of got away with it yesterday, Pascal Wehrlein, so he'll be looking to do much better today. Quick word about turn 11, actually. It seems to be causing the drivers a few problems, Nato and Dennis in particular.
Yes, it is. Very fast chicane at the end of the lap. It's your last corner where you can really make a difference. You throw the car in. It's quite bumpy on the way in as well. It undulates a lot, so it destabilizes the rear of the car, and you're on the absolute limit. And if you just get the line slightly wrong or clip the curb slightly wrong, it makes the car dance around underneath, and there's been quite a lot of people consistently going across the grass. I don't think, in fact, there's been a driver that's not been across the grass at some point through the weekend.
I was going to say that. I've never seen so many cars on the grass, but I'm guessing there's method to it, Jamie.
There is. I mean, that corner particularly, the marginal area you have to make speed corrections and things in the car is very small. So the window is small, and when you look at how close it is, you go into that set of corners and you think, okay, here I can make a difference, or I can make up some speed here, or you can lose a lot of speed. So you've got to go in a little bit like that. You've got to go in on the limit, and that's what's catching everyone out. But it does seem particularly tricky this weekend, which I've not seen in many other cars before.
It's all about just finding the limit, essentially, Alan.
Well,
if you find that limit, you get the advantage.
You've got two ways to find the limit. You build up from it, say 90, 92, 94, up to 100%. Or you can go the 104% and work back. In practice, you do the 104% to work back, because that's the quickest way to get to it. Here you can do it because it's a big open circuit with runoff. If we're in Monaco, you can't, because it's a wall. So therefore, people are actually pushing in different ways. It's a slightly different driving strategy. The critical thing is now they've got to nail it. They cannot afford that, because as you saw with Jake Dennis, then that's put him out of the next stage of qualifying.
Yeah, as we saw kind of the pressure builds from this moment, Jamie, you expecting anything different from yesterday, from certain individuals who maybe need it a little bit more?
I think what we saw yesterday was, whilst we kind of felt like it was going to be a pack race and qualifying wasn't necessarily going to be the be-all or end-all, it was still your obvious front runners from qualifying running at the front at the end of that race. So I think they're still going to really want to go out and get pole, and the confidence from getting that sort of result. And a track like this that is quite tricky to put a lap together, you're going to want to be able to do the best job possible, and sort of have it on your shoulders knowing that you've been the fastest around this track this weekend.
Quick one, you expecting more from Pascal?
Yes.
This time on?
Because ultimately he has to. No other option.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, let's see, shall we? The quarterfinals are about to start. So let's get you back to commentary with Tom Brooks.
Yeah, thank you very much, JJ. Looking forward to getting this one back underway then. Drivers ready to head out onto the track for the duels. Let's have a look at the duels ladder then. So, quarterfinals coming up first of all. Nick Cassidy versus Jono Verne, Jake Hughes versus Robin Freins, Nick de Vries and Sam Bird. And then it's the two Tag Heuer Porsches, Pascal Wehrlein, Antonio Felix da Costa. Interesting point to note there, first of all. Wehrlein versus da Costa. Billy, surely we're going to see the team, I would imagine, acting in favour of Wehrlein, because he's the championship favourite. He's got the better opportunity to get those 3 points.
It almost feels like we're going to see a Nico Rosberg at Monaco qualifying moment from Antonio Felix da Costa, where he sort of wanders off the road down at turn 1 and goes, oh, my bad. Pascal Wehrlein goes through. It feels like it's going to be that sort of moment, because the points for the championship for Pascal Wehrlein, a track where he's struggled so far this weekend, they could be critical, those 3 points.
Certainly could be. Well, here is the championship leader, Nick Cassidy. You can see there 21 duels he has won so far, and very keen to see what he is going to be able to do. 24 points the advantage he has in the Drivers' Championship. So just to remind you, he can't sew it up here this weekend now. It will go down to the finale in London, which will set us up an absolute treat. What about this man, Jean-Eric Vergne, as well? He'll be going out alongside Nick Cassidy in a few moments' time. And let's be fair to Jean-Eric Vergne, he hasn't got any alliances in the championship, doesn't need to think about it. He can just put it all on the line, and if it doesn't work out, well, he's tried his best.
Yeah, it's going to be stick or twist, and he's definitely going to twist. He's going to go for it here, Jean-Eric Vergne. He's all out for himself. He wants to pick up the big points. If he can get a pole position, that would be good.
Absolutely. Well, Jake Hughes is going to be out in the quarterfinals. Looking forward to seeing what he is going to be able to do after sticking it on the front row of the grid. Let's head down to Radzi then, shall we? He's catching up with the team principal of this man here, Ian James, and see what his thoughts are.
Well, I'm delighted to be joined by team principal of Neon McLaren, Ian James. Ian, a different day, a very different complexion, actually. Brilliant qualifying for both drivers.
Yeah, fantastic to see both of them up there. I think, you know, with Sam, he knew what he had to do today, and I think that actually through FP3, even though that didn't look too sparkly, if you look at the sector times, they were pretty good. So putting it all together, as we knew he could in quali, has put us in this situation. So happy days.
My mind for Jake was cast back slightly to Shanghai. Things didn't happen as he would have liked in race 1. All of a sudden in race 2, things totally changed. You mentioned an interview to Saunders earlier on in free practice. Actually, we're possibly seeing Jake elevate himself up. This would really consolidate a good performance here.
Yeah, I think that's what we'll hope for. I think he was desperately unlucky yesterday. I think if we can put ourselves in a good position on the grid today, then it's all to play for. And it's lovely to have both drivers now in the duels. So we've got a few sessions to get through now to see exactly where they're going to start from, but looking forward to seeing that outcome.
And just one final quick question about Sam. Does his experience, is that what keeps him out of the drama and out of all the obstacles of yesterday? Because I almost thought he's got so many years, he's a Formula E legend. Actually, he just kept his gills clean almost.
He did a brilliant job yesterday. I mean, coming from where he started all the way through and running actually in P2 at one point. So I think he was kicking himself afterwards because I think he left something on the table there. But you learn from that, and it's that experience that's really brought him into that position. I think also the drivers who've been around for a little while know how to play themselves against the other drivers on the grid as well, and I think that's absolutely key.
Thanks for your time, Ian.
Thanks, Radzi. Thank you.
Thanks to Ian, thanks to Radzi there. Good to catch up with Ian James, team principal for the Neon McLaren outfit. Good opportunity here for Hughes to capitalise. Bird also in the quarterfinals for the first time in a fairly long time, actually, as well. Hasn't won a duel for Sam Bird, actually, in 2024. So, good opportunity on the other side of the garage for him to try and capitalise.
Yeah, he was the biggest mover in the race yesterday, Sam Bird. He made up a lot of places, picked up a strong result and some points for McLaren. It's been a little while since he's been in the points himself, so it was a nice bounce back for him. But it's good to see that the pace is there, because Jake Hughes has regularly got into the latter stages of qualifying with that car. It's good to see Sam replicate that, and 2 McLarens in the quarterfinals. They could be in with a shout today.
So up from 300 to 350 kilowatts of power for the dual stages. You're Jean-Eric Vergne here, Alan. You sat there in the cockpit. What on earth are you going to be discussing with your engineer? What can you do after those group stages in this short window between now and the duels?
You can make very small adjustments in your preparation, but you are going from, as you said, a different power level from 300 to 350, so it is quite a different scenario. So the reflection back will be to FP3, and just to try to build it through from there. In reality, it's done and dusted now. All that will be happening is waiting, as we see here, for Nick Cassidy, and his engineer will just be checking the monitors and to allow him to go out, and then it's up to the driver.
Well, let's see what Nick Cassidy is going to be able to do. Reminder of the team championship that you can see there. Jaguar TCS Racing with a comfortable cushion over Jaguar Porsche. That is James Barkley, team principal for Jaguar.
But it's a fight for third position in that team's battle that's going to be really interesting as well, with 3 teams within about 10-12 points.
Yeah, really close margins actually, isn't it, as well? As you say, DS Penske, Andretti separated by 10 points there as well, and also Nissan not too far adrift of proceedings. So Cassidy and Vergne come to the exit of pit lane. Just one flying lap to remind you here in the duels. Now, what we've seen in the group stages is drivers will go out, they'll do a build lap, so they'll put heat into the tyres, the brakes, get everything up to the right optimum temperature, and then they will go out for their push lap, and they might do 2 or 3 push laps. Here in the duels, you don't get the opportunity to do that. You go out, you do a build lap, you have 1 flying lap. So if you make a mistake, that is your opportunity done and dusted. And we saw mistakes in qualifying yesterday. That was generally the outlying factor which cost drivers the opportunity to progress forward from the quarters into the semis. So, quarterfinal 1, Nick Cassidy versus Jean-Eric Vergne, Jaguar versus DS Penske. Our Formula E predictor, this is where you at home get the opportunity to vote. I think 75% will go the way of Nick Cassidy. Let's see what the Kiwi is going to be able to do as we wait for the green light to come on at the exit of pit lane. About 10 seconds or so to go, and then the drivers will head out onto the circuit for their one and only flying lap in this session. Cassidy ready to go then, aiming for pole position, aiming to get those 3 points, crucial at this stage in the championship. He's got a comfortable cushion of 24 points over his nearest rival of Pascal Wehrlein, but an extra 3 will certainly do him no harm at all.
Yeah, he'd love to open that gap up to over 1 race win worth of points. That would be a nice buffer for him with 3 races to go.
Vergne heading out onto the circuit. Home race, of course, for the Penske part of the DS Penske outfit. And Jay Penske here this weekend, as we saw, wanting to put on a good show for their team. Podium for Jean-Eric Vergne here yesterday, so he's got good form. We know that the qualifying position, as we say, is not necessarily going to be that relevant, but Vergne doesn't have any ties in the championship to have to worry about. He can go out and stick it all on the line.
I think everybody at this moment in time, though, to be honest, in the quarterfinals is going to be sticking it on the line. And I don't think there'll be any thought process about sort of the wider discussions right now.
Well, Vergne's won 6 of his previous 8 quarterfinal duels this year. The last 7 Formula E events, Cassidy has reached the dual stages in the even number rounds and none of the odd number rounds. We're on round 14, so it's even numbered. So if you're a bit of a fan of superstition, there's something there for you.
Sorry, repeat that again.
Cassidy has reached the dual stages in all of the even number rounds this year, but none of the odd numbered rounds.
Wow.
There you go.
There you go.
Anyway, down to the first corner here for Nick Cassidy. Slightly deep, actually, into turn 1 there, but gathers it all up OK for turn 2.
I'm quite intrigued to see the start of the lap, how these guys deal with the fact they haven't had that push lap that they were able, and the prep lap after they're coming out the pits that they have in practice. Quarterfinals is very different, the approach. You can see it on the outlap, they're having to be really aggressive with the tyres to try and build that temperature, and they're straight into it. The first sector from Nick Cassidy is a blinder, though.
Yeah, 26.7 first sector. It looks really, really neat and tidy for Nick Cassidy as he's now getting to turn 7. Missed the apex there, though. Didn't get anywhere near it, probably about a metre and a half away from it, as he's now on the back straight.
The thing is, that's going to compromise his run all the way down and towards this next big braking zone. Jean-Eric Vergne, 10th and a half away in that first sector through turns 10 and 11. This is where we've seen those mistakes coming through. We saw it for Jake Dennis a few moments ago. Nice and clean there, though, for Nick Cassidy, unlike on lap 25 of the race yesterday.
Looked like he was leaving a little bit of margin there, Tom. I think that's an area of the circuit that's maybe playing on his mind. That middle sector, though, from Jean-Eric Vergne, you can see the swing back into Jean-Eric Vergne's favour here. A 109.0 for Nick Cassidy. It's not that good of a lap. This is an opportunity for Jean-Eric Vergne.
Oh.
A big slide, though.
Yeah, big slide on the rear going through into turn 11 there for Jev as he comes out of the final corner. Is he going to knock out the championship leader as we come to the timing line here in Portland? Vergne has got the advantage and he's got a place in the semi-final. Nick Cassidy will not go through from the quarters. It's DS Penske ahead of Jaguar.
Yeah, that running wide at turn 7, I think, has cost Nick Cassidy there as he went into the corner. He just missed the apex, that, as you said, lost his momentum down the straight. But at the same time as well, Jean-Eric Vergne nearly threw it away, actually, in the last corner. Got a big, big oversteer coming in. Here we are, falling again through the fast chicane, then braking into the last corner. That's not normally the way you want to feed the car in with a bit of oversteer, but he managed to grapple it up and still do the time.
Almost gave it a Scandinavian flick on the way into the last corner there. A little bit of a different approach from Jean-Eric Vergne.
Nice one from Jean-Eric Vergne, right on the limit in that qualifying session. You can see him bunny hopping his way over that curb on the inside of turn 11. Quarterfinal 2 then, Jake Hughes versus Robin Freitz, Neil McLaren versus Envision. Jake Hughes on the front row of the grid here yesterday. The first time he started from the front row, but not from pole position, actually, this season.
That's a punchy predictor saying that Hughes with, what was it, 69% is going to beat Robin, considering Robin's performance this weekend.
They were both strong in qualifying yesterday. Robin Freitz was fastest in the group qualifying. Across Group A and B, he was the fastest. So, yeah, that is a strong suggestion that they're not giving him as much of a chance. Jake Hughes has cut the beam at the first sector at 26.8, so we have seen faster.
Yeah, Freint's faster in the first sort of mini sector. He hasn't come through the first sector proper, so there's still a couple more corners left to go for the Dutchman. Fresh off the back of that podium yesterday as well for Robin Freint. He's riding a crest of a wave of confidence. Hughes pulling a little bit back in that second sector at the moment, but Freint still just under a tenth of a second ahead as we head down into the far chicane.
A little bit deep from Robin Freint, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner through turn 7 there, so he might have lost a little bit of time to Jake Hughes, and he has.
Yeah, Hughes big through the fast chicane, really took a lot of curb and gained a bit of time back.
Hughes then coming over the timing line. What's it going to be? The score on the draw, 1:08.8. That's a competitive lap time there for Hughes. This is going to be really close. Snap of oversteer through turn 11 though for Robin Freint. Might have cost him half a tenth of a second or so. Needs a strong exit out of this, and he's fighting the car all the way as he gets it right up to the wall. To the timing line we go. Jake Hughes versus Robin Freint, and Freint has done it by 14 thousandths of a second. The Envision knocks out the McLaren and goes through into the semi-finals. He will go head-to-head with Jean-Eric Vergne.
It was fair to say Robin Freint was pretty much touching the wall all the way down that main straight coming out the final corner. He left nothing on the table in terms of track margin there.
Nice job, Robin. We are through. Go push 300.
Well, Freint has reached the duels for consecutive races for the first time since the start of 2022, and he goes forwards into the semis. Quarterfinal 3, Nick de Vries versus Sam Bird. And 81% of you think it's going to go the way of the Neon McLaren driver. This is an unfamiliar duel lineup, actually, as well. Sam Bird has not won a duel in 2024, just to remind you as well. He's 3-0 down in the quarterfinal. He's got an opportunity, though, to right that here this afternoon. Yeah,
we have to remember Nick de Vries' teammate was 4th yesterday and very competitive in qualifying as well. So the Mahindra's been pretty quick, but he's gone deep into turn 1. Compromised a bit his exit out of the corner, and he's run down to turn 4.
Let's have a look and see what it's like here for Sam Bird. Down in towards turn 1, looks a little bit neater and a bit tidy. We've slowed the 2 laps down here, so de Vries, though, in real time, he's up ahead on the road. We have now got a side-by-side comparison here between de Vries and Bird, so we can get a real idea of what it's like in terms of the times between the two. Bird looking like he was slightly tighter into that right-hander of 4 and into 5 as well.
They're just going to cut the beam at sector 1 here. Nick de Vries at 27.0. Sam Bird nearly 3 tenths ahead at this stage in the lap. That first sector was a real disaster for de Vries.
Yeah, Sam Bird picking up the initial advantage in that first sector. Is de Vries to be able to pull it back, though, in sector 2 as we come on the run down this straight. De Vries catching, as you can see, and he's faster in that second sector as well, by the looks of things, as we come down this back straight into turns 10 and 11. This is where the lap can really be won or lost. A lot of curb on the inside of turn 10 there for Nick de Vries. Cars both looking fairly stable on the rear. It's going to be a run to the line here between these two drivers. Very close to call. Bird pulling it out of the bag in that final sector. Can de Vries do anything to upset the apple cart, though, and get that Mahindra through into the semi-finals? No, he can't. Bird goes through by just under 2 tenths of a second.
It's fair to say that quarter-final was not fast, though. Those 2 lap times were the slowest 2 lap times we've seen from any of the other quarter-finals. So Sam Bird making it through, but maybe not in contention when it comes to his semi-final. It'll be tough.
It's Jeff Dodds cloning himself. He was in McLaren a minute ago. Now he's down at Mahindra. He's omnipresent.
Yeah, he's running down the pit lane there. And this is Sam coming through the chicane. Misses a little bit the line there as he came through turn 11. And actually, that was a sector where de Vries was a bit quicker.
Yeah, you can see visibly that those lap times were not quite as fast as we saw a few moments ago. Anyway, on to quarterfinal 4, the 2 Tag Heuer Porsches. Pascal Wehrlein versus Antonio Felix da Costa. 61% say it'll go the way of Antonio Felix da Costa. However, a caveat to that, there's a championship to think about here. Are we going to see team orders between the 2 Tag Heuer Porsches? Will da Costa just lift off, let Wehrlein go through into the semi-finals and give him that opportunity to get those 3 points at this stage in the season? What do you reckon, Alan?
I think theoretically it's there. I think practically, then I wouldn't ever want to stop my driver from pushing at this stage.
Well, this is the first time we've seen the 2 Tag Heuer Porsche drivers facing each other in the duels since Monaco in 2022. On that occasion, it was Wehrlein versus Lotterer. Wehrlein managed to defeat Lotterer in the quarterfinals, and it's pretty even Stevens in that first sector.
Yeah, but da Costa's much quicker. You see Wehrlein just had a struggle of the first sector right now, and it's da Costa that's the one on the charge.
Costa looking pretty handy then as we come down this back straight and building out more of an advantage as we head into that second sector. 3.5 tenths. That's an arm and a leg of time in Formula E.
It's absolutely massive. Da Costa's had about a 3.5 tenth margin advantage consistently across the weekend compared to Pascal. That first part of the lap, though, really was a struggle for Pascal. He's not got the balance where he needs it.
Well, let's see what it's like for them, for Pascal Wehrlein as he comes to the timing line then here in quarter-final 4. He takes the checker flag, a 1:09.1. That's not a particularly fast lap time here. Antonio Felix da Costa, 3.5 tenths up in that second sector. Is he going to, though, allow his teammate to go through, or is he just going to drive for the line and drive for himself? He's coming out of the final corner. It's looking pretty good here for Antonio Felix da Costa, and he's going to go through into the semi-finals by over 3.5 tenths of a second. Tag Heuer Porsche's charge for round 14 will be led by the man who's won the last 3 out of 4 races.
He has really got that car, the balance underneath him, spot on. I loved watching him there through 10 and 11. He almost makes the exit of 11 into the last corner, one long corner.
Quickest dual lap.
Just really got a good feel with that Porsche car. The balance looks nice, a lot of long apex corners, and he just looks like he's got it settled underneath him, Alan, doesn't he?
Yeah, he can make the car dance underneath him, and he's got the control. It's not as if he's taking excessive risks to get the lap time. It's there underneath him and consistently, and that's, I think, a good thing for Antonio, but also for the team's point of view as well, because that'll put them in a good position for the ability in the race.
Well, a 4th consecutive duel appearance then for Antonio Felix da Costa, and he progresses into the semi-finals. He'll go head-to-head with Sam Bird there. Just a reminder of the team's championship that you can see at the bottom of your screen at the moment. Tag Heuer Porsche, they want to get those 3 points, and if it's not going to go the way of Pascal Wehrlein, if they're putting all their eggs in the basket of Antonio Felix da Costa, well, given his form recently, you'd be hard to bet against him going for that pole position here today. There is Florian Modlinger on the right-hand side of your picture. Team principal for the Tag Heuer Porsche team. Be keen to see what da Costa will be able to do going head-to-head against Sam Bird. Let's have a look at the duels ladder once again then. So we had Cassidy versus Verne. Verne knocks out Cassidy, Freitz knocks out Hughes, Bird knocks out De Vries, and da Costa knocks out teammate Pascal Wehrlein. So the semi-finals looks like this. You've got DS Penske's Jean-Eric Verne versus Envision's Robin Freitz. Then you've got Sam Bird in the McLaren and Antonio Felix da Costa in the Tag Heuer Porsche. So 4 different powertrains going head-to-head against one another in these semis.
A real mixed-up order we've got ourselves here, isn't it?
So car into the weighbridge then, and out for Pascal Wehrlein as he doesn't progress forwards from the duels, of the quarterfinal stages of the duels, I should say.
It's interesting, looking at the times, you got a feel for Jake Hughes there. He actually was the 3rd quickest driver out of all of the quarterfinals we saw there, but because Robin Freitz was just that little bit quicker, he's found himself out.
Yeah, well, if he'd been up against Nick De Vries, for example, he'd have had a better probability of getting through into the semis, wouldn't he?
Yeah, 100%. That quarterfinal in particular, Nick De Vries and Sam Bird, it's fair to say both their laps weren't ideal. So whether Sam's got more improvement in his back pocket, we'll have to wait and see.
Thank you.
Well, he's gone DAC to DAC over the last couple.
Sector 1 and 3. Just missing. Yep. A tickle in sector 2. 4 or 5 was not nice.
Antonio Felix da Costa there. Good to hear from him. He's gone DAC to DAC in the last couple of races. Can he go DAC to DAC to DAC?
Tom. You love it.
I'm a big fan of it. Anyway, let's go down to Ratty and catch up with the man who started on the front row of the grid yesterday, Jake Hughes. Sadly does not go forwards from the quarterfinals here today.
Jake Hughes through to the quarterfinals, but no further, sadly. 14 1,000ths of a second. It's fine margins in this quali format.
Yeah, honestly, I'm trying to hold it together, but I'm really frustrated. The lap was good, but unfortunately, and the car was good, but the dash in the middle of the last few corners just went bright red. And yeah, not to sound like I'm making excuses, but it took my attention for a period of time. I probably lost a tenth and a half, which would have been enough to get me through. So I'm a bit frustrated because obviously when it happens that you just didn't do the lap or the car wasn't there, the tyres weren't there, it's frustrating. But when the car was flying and that good, and then that's something that puts you off, it's a bit frustrating.
I imagine it was also frustrating what happened yesterday with that incident with Mitch Evans that ultimately cost you the race. Is that a case of park that and just focus on today?
Yeah, that's fine. I haven't actually spoke to Mitch, but there's I mean, from my side, there's no hard feelings with Mitch. It was one of those things, I think. I can see his point of view. I think he can probably see my point of view, but today's a different day.
And just finally, cast your mind back to Shanghai. Day 1, you qualify well, race doesn't go to plan. Day 2, qualify well, race does go to plan, you're on podium. Possibly repeat here?
I hope so. I mean, I think we were on course for a good result yesterday. I mean, I'd done both my tap modes, still sitting in P2, so yesterday was a bit of a missed opportunity, but nothing we could have done. So, yeah, looking forward to bouncing back today.
So we make race well.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Good to hear there then from Jake Hughes, and also from Ramsey as well. Disappointment there for Hughes, but nonetheless a good opportunity, as he said, to turn around his fortunes after a difficult Saturday here in Portland. So now our focus shifts over to the semi-finals. I see slightly cloudy overhead. It's a bit cooler out here, isn't it?
It's a little bit cooler than it was yesterday, but the suns were starting to peek out through the clouds, and when it did, it was building up quite quickly. When we had free practice, the 3 this morning at 7:30, the track temperature was down at 19 degrees, and so now quite considerably hotter, but not quite as hot as it was yesterday, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was about 27, 28 degrees in the air temperature. Track temperature was significantly higher. I had to actually change into shorts before we got into the start of the race because the temperature really caught me off guard. I'm glad I had to change of clothing.
That is rare for you, Tom. You love those jeans. They're glued to you.
Certainly do, mate. You're not wrong. Good to see so many fans here in Portland, in Oregon this weekend as well. Of course, next year for Formula E, we're back over to Miami, going to Homestead. I can't wait for a bit of Miami.
Yeah, it's great to be in the States. To be honest, they like the racing. This coast as well, they really like it. The circuit hosts a lot of different other championships, including the IndyCar Championship. So Jamie Chadwick will be actually racing on this track in the NXT Series very soon, coming up in a couple of weeks' time. And I'm sure she'll be attacking in the same way that she did when she won the last race out in Road America.
Let's have a look at Antonio Felix da Costa. This is the quickest lap from the quarterfinals of the duels. Talk us through it, Bill.
Yeah, the first sector was somewhere where he really excelled, a 26.7. Let's have a look at his approach, because we've seen different ones. He opens up the apex of 2, that left-hander. We've seen a lot of drivers run deep into that first chicane and compromise their exit. Antonio's not been doing that. Then we go into the long apex corners to end the first sector. Again, the car balance looks really nice through here. He's just threading the eye of the needle. He's not really having too much movement when it comes down to the steering. Just really controlled, measured driving for Antonio. A little kick of oversteer, which he did mention on the radio to his team that a couple of corners there weren't the best. Then again, setting up the exit, again, a bit of oversteer on the exit onto this long straight. This was a sector where he wasn't particularly strong. The last sector of that lap, though, I really want to concentrate. As he comes out of 10 and 11, he does a slightly different line, and he almost makes the exit of this right-hander at 11, all one corner going into the last corner. He opens it up, uses the track nicely, keeps the rotation in the car, and then a clean exit using all the track. Nice driving from Antonio Felix da Costa.
Yep, it was definitely showing a lot of confidence in the car. Something that we didn't see at the beginning of the season. They didn't look to have that sort of fluidness with it, moving with the car. It was like one or other was dictating the reality, but now he's really got a confidence and he's able to push it, and he knows what the car's going to do. And he knows that if it does step out with that oversteer, he just hangs on to it.
It's interesting, actually, because I remember seeing da Costa in Diriyah, and he looked just completely despondent. He had no direction, no idea how to set up the car, and he knows he's a talented driver. You don't become a Formula E champion by luck. He won in Gen 3 as well. He won in Cape Town last year, but the wheels kind of came off the wagon there after.
He's won in Gen 1 and he's won in Gen 2 as well as Gen 3, so it's not as if he doesn't know how to be successful in that respect, and he's got a lot of experience, and it sometimes just takes a little bit of time for it to click, and it's not necessarily just the driver, it's how the driver interacts with the engineers and the engineers interact with the driver.
Semi-finals coming up then. Jonathan Verne versus Robin Freitz, so DS Penske versus Envision, Stellantis powertrain versus Jaguar, and then we've got Sam Bird in the Neon McLaren with the Nissan powertrain, and da Costa in the Tag Heuer Porsche, of course, with the Porsche powertrain. So this will be a very exciting session and very unpredictable, I am sure. And we're ready to get semi-final 1 underway then. Jonathan Verne, the Frenchman, versus Robin Freitz, the Dutchman. Quite a lot closer in terms of the predictor vote for this one, 59-41 in favour of the Frenchman at the moment.
Yeah, this one is hard to call. Robin Freitz, for me, has been the more consistent in qualifying trim across the weekend. We saw glimpses of that in practice. In the group qualifying earlier on, he was fastest. So if I was going to lean any direction, it would probably be for Robin Frijns.
Yeah, Frijns has reached the semi-finals in both Portland races actually this weekend. That's despite having only reached the semis once in the first 12 rounds of the 2024 season, and that was back in Diriyah in February, if you remember, in the night race.
Yeah, but the actual season for both these drivers hasn't been as consistent as they have had in the past, and so therefore there's you know, there is a little bit of recovery. We saw a great drive from Jean-Eric Vergne yesterday. I have to say it was one of the most underrated drives because he popped himself up onto the podium without necessarily anybody realising it. It was really, really nice. The way he scythed through the grid.
Yeah, started 14th on the grid yesterday, came up to finish in second position, and now beginning his build lap to try and get his car up to the optimum working window. Making his way out of turn 7 and turn 8. Let's have a look at him here coming out of pit lane, just giving a little wave to the camera. Himself primed and ready. I remember when we were back in Diriyah, actually, he had his hands at the cockpit trying to cool himself down. Such was the temperatures of the late afternoon sunshine that we had there. Anyway, that was then, and this is now as we begin the flying lap for Jean-Eric Vergne as he rounds the final corner of turn 12 here in Portland and comes to the timing line to begin his one and only flying lap in this session. Robin Frijns a further way down the road. As we head into turn 1, this is where the lap time could be won or lost in just the first few metres.
I thought he was going to start losing the rear there as he turned into the corner. It was just exactly on the limit, but managed to pull it together.
Down in towards these sweeping corners of that first sector, looking nice and tidy. Again, we've slowed the lap times down here between Jean-Eric Vergne and Robin Frijns. So Frijns on the right, Jev on the left then, as we come through this first sector, and we can give you a real idea of just who is gaining an advantage through these different corners.
A couple of different lines there. Robin Frijns taking a bit of a deeper line, almost setting the car into a bit of understeer through that first sector, keeping it the balance more on the front end, and it looks to have paid dividends. Only a few hundredths in it though, so it's super tight out there. Deep at 7 though for Robin Frijns. He got nowhere near the apex.
Is that going to compromise his run all the way down this back straight? Frijns faster in the first sector, but Jev is pulling it back in this second sector, and surely he's going to build up an advantage over Frijns now coming through. And look at that. Couple of tenths of a second is now the gap that he's been able to build over the Dutchman through the final series of corners we go. Nice and tidy there for Jean-Eric Vergne. All he needs to do is drive the same lap as he's been doing, and he will be on for that spot into the finals then. Really close to the wall between the two drivers. They come to break the beam, and Jean-Eric Vergne for DS Penske has done the business. 0.2 of a second ahead of Robin Frijns, and a spot in the finals to boot.
Yeah, it all fell apart for Robin Frijns down at turn 7 there. He just got nowhere near the apex. It compromised his exit. Just over 2 tenths he lost from that moment.
Well, Jay Penske, home round for the DS Penske outfit here. Delight for him, disappointment on the other side for Sylvain Filippi. Let's have a look at this run through turns 10 and 11. What do you make of this, Alan? Car behaving as you reckon?
Well, it's more importantly if the car's behaving as Jean-Eric Vergne reckons. But yeah, it's nice, neat and tidy actually. Aggressive, over the curb. It doesn't go too deep where the car's bouncing around. It was pretty sweet.
Second of the semi-finals then, Sam Bird versus Antonio Felix da Costa. And the favour there with the public very much in favour of Antonio Felix da Costa. That's given the fact that Bird's first win in the duels this year was in the quarterfinals about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, you do feel for Bird that he's got to pull something out the bag to get near Da Costa here, because Antonio's had such great pace this weekend. I'd be very shocked if Sam was able to put a real challenge to him, but who knows? This is Formula E.
Yeah. But it's also still been a very strong qualifying for Sam Bird so far, so therefore getting to the semis is a good position to start this race. You're out of all the trouble and the mischief that can definitely happen at the first corner.
Massively.
However,
So
he's still got to deliver the lap, and he's done a good first sector.
Yeah, last time we saw Sam Bird in the duels was back in Misano, fairly long time ago. Da Costa slightly faster in the first sort of mini sector at the moment. He hasn't come through. 26.8 for Sam Bird in sector 1, 26.7 for Da Costa. So a tenth of a second exactly between those two drivers. Bird down the back straight into this chicane. Bit of a wiggle through turn 10 there. That might have just cost him a little bit. So through the final series of corners we go, and coming to the timing line then for Sam Bird. Da Costa building up a bit of an advantage then as they come to the checkered flag. So Sam Bird's going to come through. It's a 108 .990 for him. Da Costa, 10th and a half is the advantage that he's built over Sam Bird in this second sector. We come through the third and final sector then for Da Costa, and is he going to be in the fight for pole position alongside Jean-Eric Vergne? We come to the checkered flag here, and Da Costa does it then for Tag Heuer Porsche, a 10th and a half quicker than Sam Bird. It is going to be DS Penske versus Porsche, Da Costa versus Vergne in the fight for the front row.
Yeah, Antonio there really made it count. The first and last sector where he's been strong all weekend, he was able to execute. Sam Bird, though, took the challenge towards Antonio Felix da Costa. A much stronger lap from him there. And where he's lining up on the grid, I think he can be really happy with that.
Absolutely, making his way through these sweeping corners.
Watch the delta. Super oversteering now. Yes, I saw that. Let's cool them down as much as possible. That's the only way we have now. Watch the delta.
So saying that the car was a bit oversteery, he was just overheating those tyres a little bit there for Antonio Felix da Costa, and he'll be hoping that they're able to just iron out those issues going into the finals in a few moments' time. As I said, 10th and a half the advantage that Da Costa gets over Sam Bird. Great stuff for Sam Bird, though. He'll start from that second row of the grid, so he'll be pretty pleased with that. And now it is all back into the garage, all action stations, and focusing again on the finals.
Okay, you through, baby.
Yeah, come on. Head away, buddy. Good work. Great job. Let's go to the final.
Very good to hear there for Antonio Felix da Costa. Absolutely delighted with that one. Very, very pleased for him and for Tag Heuer Porsche. As I said, Sam Bird will line up on that second row of the grid. Jean-Eric Vergne, a possibility to get himself in that fight for pole position. He has had a couple of poles so far this year, most recently at Shanghai a few weeks ago. Before that was back in Diriyah. Here is the duel ladder then, just to remind you exactly how we got here in the fight for the finals then. So quarterfinals, we saw Vergne knocking out Cassidy, Freins knocking out Hughes, Bird knocking out De Vries, Da Costa knocking out Verline. In the semis, Vergne got ahead of Freins and Da Costa got ahead of Bird. And then into the finals, we will have Jean-Eric Vergne versus Antonio Felix da Costa. This is going to be hugely exciting to see what happens and who will take pole position for round 14. Lovely job then from Antonio Felix da Costa and for Jean-Eric Vergne as the temperature begins to rise, not only here at the circuit, but also on circuit as well. These two drivers ready to go head-to-head with one another. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what is going to happen here for this one. What do you make of this one, Alan? If you were a betting man, who would you be going for? Jean-Eric Vergne versus da Costa?
Well, teammates at DS Techeetah in the day, and in fact both of them won championships through their time. I've got to say my sort of confidence is a little bit more with Antonio Felix da Costa, but looking at Jean-Eric Vergne, he has been consistently there. In fact, if I look at their semi-final time, it's only 0.08 of a second between them.
Yeah, super tight out there, isn't it, Alan? You could not separate them by much. 6,000ths, though, in Formula E terms, that feels like a lifetime, surely. We're used to 1,000th being the separator. It's crazy out there.
Well, one man who made it through into the duels for the second time this season was Nick De Vries in the Mahindra. And he caught up with Radzi a few moments ago as he got knocked out in the quarterfinal, sadly, to Sam Bird. But nonetheless, I'm sure we'll be pretty pleased with that.
Nick De Vries through to the duels. Unfortunately, the semi-finals. How was it from your end?
Yeah, I think it was a good qualifying session, although my duel lap wasn't very good. I felt like we had a lot of tire temperature and didn't really have the rear support that I was looking for. But nevertheless, I think it's been a good qualifying session and nice to get back in the duels.
We're at the business end of the season. Where's your mind at and where's your team's mind at right now?
Hasn't changed from the beginning of the year. We obviously try to do the best we can, extract the maximum out of our package and try to score points.
Have a good race.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Yeah, good to hear there for Nick De Vries, admitting that the lap wasn't perfect, but nonetheless, great for Mahindra to get themselves into the duels. They know that they're not going to be fighting for the podiums and the victories at this stage in their Formula E campaign, but they've been on a big rebuilding mission over the winter. A lot of internal changes that went on. Got Jeremy Calanton in from the MSG group, and he's been spearheading their campaign, and you've seen the progress visibly for them over the course of this year. Pole position for Renault Mortara back in Berlin, and they've slowly been making their way into the duels a little bit more consistently.
Yep, they definitely have, but they needed to sort of bounce back. Mahindra, when I first joined Formula E, were one of the title protagonists all the way through, and so it's obviously a big change for them. And as we now look at mock final with Jean-Eric Verne on the left and Antonio Felix da Costa on the right, this is taken from their semi-final times, which was 6,000ths of a difference between the two.
Just having a look at their approach, it's very similar there.
So then, all eyes on the fight for the front row between Jean-Eric Verne and Antonio Felix da Costa. What a wonderful weekend of racing we've had here so far in Portland. This is Jean-Eric Verne versus Antonio Felix da Costa. And this is mock final. What we've done is we've compiled their two fastest laps from the dual stages of qualifying so far to see if we can pick any differences in lines here. Into turns 10 and 11. Bit of more oversteer there through 11 there for da Costa by the looks of things.
But also you could hear the car bouncing on the ground. I think that was Jean-Eric Verne, because when he was in his semi-final with Robin Frins, I could hear it as well coming up there. So the front of the car is much lower for Jean-Eric Verne than it is for Antonio Felix da Costa.
Yeah, nicely done for both of those two drivers. In terms of the semi-finals, it was a 108.862 for Verne, a 108.856 for da Costa. I want to say that's a pretty tight margin, but as you said, Billy, in terms of how it's been in Formula E so far this weekend, that's a fortnight.
Yeah, I'm used to just 1,000th being the difference maker. It has been crazy this season, the gaps and how competitive this championship is. It can't be underrated.
Don't forget about the Formula E predictor as well. Scan the QR code, top left-hand corner of your screen. Tell us who you think is going to be progressing forwards to the front row, into pole position, I should say, for the final. Jean-Eric Verne versus Antonio Felix da Costa. Da Costa getting ready to head out onto the track. And there is Jean-Eric Verne. You can see his results over the last few weekends.
Interesting points in every single one of those races. He's just been consistent. He hasn't had those shining races where he's won. Yesterday, there was a really strong drive from the back of the field up to third. It's just been a consistent season where he's got his points from.
Well, you can see the wildlife watching on. I'll be honest, I'm no Bill Oddie.
No, but we're Eagles there. That's where we are.
Well, very much looking forward to this. Fantastic helicam shots of this wonderful state of Oregon as well. And actually the most popular city in the state of Oregon is Portland. And what a fantastic city it is, just full of energy and vibrance and colour.
And plenty of energy, vibrance, colour at the circuit right now. Jean-Eric Verne coming down the pit lane. He's definitely full of it himself.
What do you think, Alan, the two ex-teammates will be thinking going into this one? Will they want to be leaving a bit of a mark on each other and trying to get one up? Bragging rights in the paddock?
I think the bragging rights will be definitely there afterwards by one of them to the other. But right now, I think for da Costa, more than necessarily anything else, he's got a bit of a point to prove. Because Antonio had a very difficult start to the season. He's managed to win 3 races now, more than anyone else. And he also, I think, can sniff the fact he could maybe jump himself higher up in the end in the driver's title. If he can follow through today with a good result, then he puts himself in a great position for London.
So Jean-Eric Verne versus Antonio Felix da Costa in the finals, and the Formula E predictor says it's 72% are swinging with Antonio Felix da Costa. Given his form over the last half of this season, hard to bet against him.
Yeah, hard to bet against, but looking at the head-to-head there, it's actually 3-1 up to Jean-Eric Verne. So maybe when he goes against his ex-teammate, that just brings the best out of him.
Yeah, very much looking forward to this one. So drivers now lined up at the end of pit lane. And exiting out on to the track. As I mentioned earlier on, Jean-Eric Verne, 2 pole positions for him so far in 2024. No pole positions, though, for da Costa. 3rd on the grid is his best result over the course of this season, and that came back in Shanghai a few weeks ago.
Just another interesting little stat on this is that Antonio Felix da Costa's right behind Jean-Eric Vergne in the driver's title. They're separated by 7 points.
Well, this is da Costa's second appearance in the final since joining Porsche. The other was in Sao Paulo in 2023. So a lot of pressure riding on the Portuguese driver's shoulders, but he's got the form and the confidence in order to be able to back it up. So one build lap then and one flying lap to decide who will start on pole position here in Portland as we head down the back straight and into that tricky turn 10 and 11 chicane. Da Costa will be a little bit behind Jean-Eric Vergne in terms of the on-track position. Vergne will lead the field around the final corner and come to the timing line as he breaks the beam, getting ready to set that flying lap time here in the fight for pole position for round 14 in Portland. So da Costa over the line, down in towards turn 1, into the braking zone. This is absolutely critical. You've got to get your marks absolutely nailed, and Jean-Eric Vergne manages to get that done quite nicely.
Yeah, gets in through the first chicane. Now the tricky part, coming down into turn 4, just a puff of dust there on the left-hand side. Rolls the car in through 3, then it tightens up here into the next long right-hander, putting so much energy into that left rear tyre.
What about da Costa here? Looks quite nice and neat and tidy, Billy.
Yeah, it looks neat and tidy. We've brought Jean-Eric Vergne back in line with Antonio Felix da Costa. So let's see what they look like side by side. Da Costa having a snap of oversteer there as they came out of that first chicane. Then we go into these long apex corners down at turn 3 and 4, as Alan was mentioning, that rear tyre, rear left, really suffering through this part of the lap. And then into turn 6, this sets up where the attack zone corner is. Turn 7, super wide, cambered as well, Alan. I remember you talking a little bit about that yesterday's race show, which was fascinating to watch. Da Costa, again, looks like he uses that camber effect. He goes in early and takes the use of that banking. The margins, though, look tight at the minute, just 100th of a second separating them.
Certainly are. Down the back straight we go, in towards turns 10 and 11. A handful of corners now remaining. It's swung back in the favour of Antonio Felix da Costa in this second sector. Wide there for Jean-Eric Vergne through turns 10 and 11. It's going to be mightily close between these two drivers as they come to the checkered flag between da Costa and between Jean-Eric Vergne as they come to take the checkered flag. Is it Vergne versus da Costa? It's Jean-Eric Vergne who takes it by 25 thousandths of a second. It's pole position for Vergne and DS Penske on home soil here in Portland. What a performance. Pole number 3 of 2024 for the Frenchman.
It was hundredths of a second difference between them, between each of the sectors. It was absolutely nothing, nip and tuck. And the final detail, the last sector, went to Jean-Eric Vergne in pole position.
That yin and yang between them. Vergne started off fastest, then da Costa pulled it back in that second sector, Billy. But Vergne, an amazing final sector. We saw him have a snap of oversteer through turn 11. I thought he might have lost half a tenth of a second or so, but he just left nothing on the table.
Well, if he did lose half a tenth, he would have been on pole by an even bigger margin.
Okay, baby, most pole of Formula E. Yes! Yes! Come on! Yes! Chev, great job, man. Most poles in Formula E, buddy. Fantastic work, buddy. Fantastic work.
Thank you, Jay. That was a good lap.
And that brings on to my next point as well. Jean-Eric Vergne, as we heard on his team radio there, the most pole positions ever in Formula E. A record has been broken here this morning for round 14. And you can see the commitment as he threw the car into turn 10, into turn 11. Look at the snap of oversteer he has mid-corner, and especially right on the exit. He's over onto the curb, clambering all over it. And he manages to pull out that advantage to take a new record in Formula E.
He almost backed the car into turn 10. He was that aggressive with his turning. The car was sliding, but so nicely and so measured. Maybe a little bit too much in the last corner where we thought he might have lost time, but he hung on to that car with all he had and pole position by just over a couple of hundredths of a second.
And that stretches DS Penske's lead in the Teams Championship by 3 more points as well.
Yeah, that's over Andretti for 3rd place in the standings. So nicely done there for Jean-Eric Vergne. So now we'll wait to hear from him as he gets the Julius Baer pole position trophy presented to him. Just a reminder of the Drivers' Championship. Jean-Eric Vergne 3 more points. He now closes to within 2 points of Jake Dennis for 5th in the championship standings as well. So a possibility for even more of an upset for Dennis here this afternoon, given the fact that the 2 Andrettis were nowhere in qualifying.
Mitch Evans in 3rd is only 21 points ahead as well. So he's fighting for a podium position in the actual Drivers' Championship now.
I love that. The two former teammates, loads of respect, great camaraderie and friendship between Da Costa and Verne there.
Yeah, really good to see that. A hard, tough battle, but a fair battle. John-Eric Verne came out on top, and he extends that head-to-head over Antonio Felix Costa. It was 3-1 before that final, now it's 4-1. He always seems to bring the best out of each other.
Absolutely. Well, Jean-Eric Verne sets a new record of pole positions in Formula E. Let's get the latest from him.
Jean-Eric Verne, 3rd season pole, 17th career pole, most in Formula E history, and it's a home EP for your team. You must be delighted.
Yeah, very happy. Honestly, I gave it all in the lap. I knew Antonio was very, very quick here, and especially today. And gave it all. I mean, I left nothing on the table, just maybe a bit in the last corner where I went off a bit. But no, I'm very happy with the lap, with how qualifying went. And yeah, now we have to do the job in the race. It's only the first part. But at least, you know, there is 3 points, and you know, we're fighting for the championship and for P3 in the manufacturer championship, so it's important.
Back-to-back duels. Could it be back-to-back podiums as well now?
That would be great. I mean, yesterday I was not in duels, actually. I was quite far back. So, yeah, back-to-back podium would be nice.
Well, massive congratulations. You get yourself 3 points. You also get yourself this gorgeous trophy presented by Caitlin Popp, the board chair of St John's Centre for Opportunity.
Delight for Jean-Eric and for DS Penske here in Portland. Pole position number 17, a new record in Formula E. Fantastic. What a performance. 25 thousandths of a second separating those two drivers. Just have a look at this car going through turns 10 and 11, right on the ragged edge of adhesion. Massive amount of oversteer mid-corner. He's constantly fighting it all over the place to try and get the maximum out of it. And that is exactly what Jean-Eric Verne was able to do. That final sector was just 10 hundredths, or 100th, I should say, quicker than Antonio Felix da Costa. And that was what was able to secure him that pole position.
I knew I had to give it all to beat you. You were fast. I gave it all.
You were super consistent throughout the whole way.
Yeah.
You did a 7 now, or still?
Yeah,
9?
7. Yeah. Lost a bit in the last corner. I went off.
Missed you one.
Ah, yeah.
Exit.
That was good. Happy.
Nice to see the two former teammates and great friends debriefing amongst one another. And you can just see that external view of Verne right on the limit. We'll catch up then with Jean-Eric Verne. Starts on the front row of the grid for the first time this season, believe it or not. Let's catch up with the Portuguese driver.
Antonio Felix da Costa, a brilliant qualifying, but 3 race wins in your last 4. Are you in the form of your life?
I guess so. I don't know. It's been a big shift this year, you know. I've learned a lot about a lot of things, about myself and how to compose myself after some bad moments. But yeah, I'm feeling good in the car, and you know, feels like I got my groove back, which is nice. You know, we all go through some ups and downs in our career. I know many people who had some kind of slump at some point, professionally speaking. So yeah, I'm just happy that I could come out of it, and not only come out of it, but doing it in such a way, you know. So yeah, happy with how things are going at the moment on the track. And yeah, another good qualifying today, which has been something that I used to be very good at qualifying, and then I sucked for a while, and now it looks like I'm getting it back, so happy with this.
That's an understatement, but could the unthinkable happen in the race? Could you make it 4 in 5?
We're definitely in play, that's for sure. Let's see, still the goal is to really work for the team today. You know, we got lucky yesterday with Nick's mistake and Pascal. So, you know, it's still all in play there. So that's still our number 1 goal for now.
Race well, we can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
So then, Antonio Felix da Costa starts on the front row of the grid for the first time this season. Previous best grid slot was 3rd, and that was secured in Shanghai. Other than that, he's made all the positions up in the race. Very much looking forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do. Can he make it 4 wins out of the last 5 races? And can he do the double, crucially, here in Portland this afternoon? We'll find out in a few hours' time. Well, there we go. We can see the celebrations continuing down in Parc Fermé. This is just before they got out of the car and were interviewed by Radzi. And that was the embrace between Da Costa and Verne at the end of qualifying. Sheer delight for them. Great job. Really, really impressive stuff. And great for DS Penske. 3 points, which will help them in the Teams Championship, closing up on to the back of Tag Heuer Porsche. In fact, extending their advantage, I should say, more over Andretti in 4th place. So great news there for DS Penske. Confirmation then of the starting grid. So Kaio Collet will start 22nd with Maximilian Günther alongside. A lot of work for the German driver to do. Then it's Norman Nato. Front row of the grid, he qualified on yesterday despite starting 11th. He lines up 20th with his teammate Jake Dennis, only 1 row ahead in 18th position with Sebastian Buemi, the former champion, in 17th. And it's an all ERT next row with Sete Camara just behind teammate Dan Ticktum. Sasha Fenestraz just behind Nico Muller in the Abt Cupra. On the fringes of the top 10, you've got Eden Mortara and Mitch Evans, the man who crossed the line first yesterday, but ultimately was classified in 8th following that penalty. Stoffel Van Dorn just inside the top 10 with Jehan de Ruvela. Fantastic qualifying for him in the second of the Maseratis. Nick de Vries in the Mahindra, also into the duels for the second time this season, just behind the championship-elect Pascal Wehrlein. And the championship leader, Nick Cassidy, 6th place on the grid, with the man who started from the front row, Jake Hughes. Sam Bird, his teammate, lines up directly ahead of him in 3rd place with Robin Freitz for company. And the front row of the grid is occupied by Antonio Felix da Costa for the first time this season, and Jean-Eric Verne taking his 3rd pole position of 2024. Superb job from Jev. He'll be absolutely delighted with that one. You can see the fans down here as well in the fan village. Let's have a look at the Drivers' Championship. Just to remind you, of course, 3 points scored there for Jean-Eric Verne means that he moves to within just 2 points of Jake Dennis. Those two also not far off the back of Oliver Rowland, who, just to remind you, is not racing here this weekend due to illness. So a good opportunity for them to overtake the Briton and move themselves up in the championship. Da Costa there, 7th place, of course. He would have been further up, but for being denied that victory in Mazzano due to the technical infringement. And you can see Jaguar TCS Racing, a 55-point advantage they have over Tag Heuer Porsche. They need 95 points to be crowned as the team's champions here this weekend. It's not going to be achievable, sadly, unfortunately for them, in real terms. And you can see there, DS Penske also building out an advantage over the Andretti team in 4th place as well. But what a job from the double Formula E world champion, Jean-Eric Verne, as he takes his 3rd pole of the season.
Right, so there we have it. That's the end of quali. It's Jean-Eric Verne who has managed to put it on pole, and that is a record as well for Jean-Eric Verne. He has got the most pole positions in Formula E history, and what a day to do it on home soil as well for DS Penske. Talk us through just his whole session, really, how he looked in that final, Alan. I mean, it was close, but he just had the edge.
It was close. It was within hundredths of a second.
Yeah,
The difference was like this at the end of it. But it was all the way through qualifying. It was like that. The interesting thing for me, if I looked at the dual stages, if I looked at the quarters, if I looked at the semis and the final, he actually replicated the same lap time all the way through. And that consistency is something that not many other people are able to do, which is also one of the reasons that he's had so many pole positions in this category.
Impressed, Jamie?
Super impressed. Exactly as Alan said, you have to execute on numerous occasions in this qualifying format, and to do that, especially at a track like this that we've seen so many drivers making mistakes, is hard to do. So I think it's fitting that he's got his record here, because yeah, it makes sense for him to be able to do that lap on lap is super impressive.
It is indeed. Now, he started 14th yesterday, finished 3rd on the podium. Going to be a different type of race for him today, but he's obviously showing that the car's got what it takes to get him the win.
Exactly, he should be pretty confident. Obviously, they had good race pace yesterday, and then he's obviously shown that he's got good qualifying pace today. And I think this one's a nice brush for the ego. The pole position, he's got the trophy, can be happy about that. Clear track into turn 1, but I think the race will be a very different challenge.
It will be a different challenge. Right, let's head to Billy, shall we? Who's going to talk us through Jean-Eric Verne's lap.
So I'm now joined by Jean-Eric Verne, the most pole positions in Formula E history. That's got to be a stat that you like the sound of.
Yeah, I like the sound of it. It's nice. You know, you need to be fast to be on pole, and yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great.
We're talking about fast. We've got your lap here.
Yeah.
Run us through what it was like, because it was trading 100ths of a second between you and Antonio throughout the lap.
Yeah, I knew I had to give it all, and every time I was losing close to a tenth in the first chicane, I could never get the right braking point, and I got it right for this time, and then I was on a good run for all the remaining corners.
Lots of long apex corners here. What's the car like underneath you at this point?
It's quite difficult because you can really easily lose it. I mean, you can see it's understeer, but the problem is the moment you get oversteer, your corner is done. So it's the, finding the limit where you're going to have the oversteer that is important.
And then turn 7, this is somewhere in the race with the attack mode that it always gets interesting. Nice and neat and tidy there. And then we go into 10 and 11.
Yeah, yeah, this is the moment where I said, okay, I have to go for it. And I lost the car a bit. I went a bit too aggressive, too hard. I lost it in exit. Took a bit too much the inside curb. You will see on the left, on the right corner.
Still keeping it on the circuit. This was the moment we thought it could be all over. What were you thinking?
I lost a tiny bit of time on the delta, but I think I gained a bit in the entry. So overall, it was similar.
It worked out nicely. Well, pole position. Obviously, yesterday in the race, you started 18th. You made a huge turnaround of form, got onto the podium. How do you expect the race to go today, starting from pole?
Well, I mean, I hope I can stay in front. Let's see, the race is completely different. As I've shown yesterday, starting from the back, it's not a big problem, and same goes the other way around. Starting from the front doesn't mean that you're going to end up there. So it's all to play for. We're going to have to work hard, but, at least those are 3 points, and it's important.
Well, Jeff, congratulations on making history. Well done.
Billy there talking with John-Eric Vergne. That's his car that got him onto pole position today. The man that he was up against, actually, Jamie, who I think we should talk about as well, Antonio Felix da Costa. Alan touched on just how close that race was. His form just continues to get better and better. Can he make it 4 in 5?
I think so. I think he's got a good shot at it. But honestly, it's just these moments of showcasing what his ability is are so important. And qualifying really is that moment where you don't really have many external factors influencing the result. So for him to be able to go out there, put it on the front row by such a small margin, I think is really showing his form as of late.
Yeah. What is it, Alan? Is it just confidence? Because I heard him talking before about he's gone through phases in his career. He's been very good at qualifying, then he's not been so good, but actually, feeling good again now. Is it the car? Is it the person? Where does that perfect blend come from to be putting in the performance he's getting now?
I think it's the car. I think it's the way the interaction with the team, the way the team support the driver, put their arm around him, maybe necessarily give him a push at certain times. Yeah. And ultimately, when you sit in the car, the knowledge that you're ahead of it, it's not dictating you. The car is being dictated by you. And that is confidence. And that's a 1/10 of a second. Without doubt, that's a 1/10 of a second. It's also consistency. And he's got it. He didn't go to bed quick and wake up slow. He actually just, something wasn't quite clicking in the mechanism, and now it definitely is. He's on a roll.
He is indeed. You quite like that whole kind of, how do we put it in the safest way possible? That's a reminder of how he needs to turn up. You mentioned it in Misano, I'm sure you did. Just that every now and again that drivers need to be reminded. You've got to deliver.
Without doubt, you do. Any sports person does.
Yeah.
We're all charging, and we are judged on performance. We're not just judged on if we're nice people, we're judged on performance. And as a racing driver, 1/10 of a second count.
I miss those days, I really do. Let's get into Nick Cassidy, shall we? Not gone great for him, has it really? Do you think he's feeling the pressure, or do you just think this is just something he can fix for the race later on?
I think good, not great, is what I say. It's not bad, it's not terrible. He made it through to the duels. Maybe the team are struggling a little bit today. We saw Mitch Evans get knocked out in the group stages, which, if you take where they were yesterday, is very different. I think the pressure's one thing, but then executing to these tiny, tiny margins and not wanting to make a mistake is another. I think someone like da Costa can go into these sessions a little bit carefree in a way. If he makes a mistake, he makes a mistake, but he doesn't, and ideally he ends up on the front row, whereas Nick can't make a mistake, and that difference is going to be a 1/10 of a second or whatever it was that didn't get him through.
Well, those are the differences that make you champion and the ones that make you not the champion in the end. But let's hear what he's got to say, shall we? He's with Redzi.
Nick Cassidy through to the duels, but when you're the championship leader, I guess all eyes are on you. How tough was it to put what happened yesterday behind you?
It's still there, it still happens, but I think I did a good job in quality, I think I did a good job in duels. We just weren't quite fast enough.
And in terms of today, anything changed from yesterday or just business as usual?
Yeah, one-man band.
And just finally, on an emotional level, I can't imagine what's going through your brain. The expectation, the pressure, is that tough?
No, I don't think there's any pressure or expectation. I think there was a lot of happy people yesterday, so that's part of life. racing happens, and you just got to push on.
Nice, Tom, mate. Race well today.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, I mean, we were going to kind of knock this forward to the race a bit later on, but I have to kind of pick up on something he said there.
I wonder which part of it is.
Yeah, one-man band. What did you make of that?
Well, he's part of a team.
That's not
There's
a
two
one-man
drivers
band,
in the team.
Yeah.
Both drivers are fighting for a championship, and that suggested that actually each are out for their own. And so, therefore, he's not necessarily going to get the backup of Mitch Evans in terms of his title fight.
Yeah.
Can we really say that's a bad thing?
No, but I don't get why he said that, because yesterday it looked like they were still working as a team. Okay, you know, whether we had that extra lap at the end with Nick leading, we didn't get to find out whether Mitch was going to attack him or not. But all year they've worked well together. Even now, they just seem like a really great team. So I don't understand why he said that. There's clearly something's happened between yesterday and today that we haven't seen or heard about that's made him drop that little comment in.
Well, either way, it sets up for a very interesting watch for us a little bit later on. Nick Cassidy clearly not happy there, but here's a man who is very, very happy today. Jean-Eric Vergne is the man that managed to put it on pole today for the second race of this doubleheader here in Portland. Make sure you come and join us a little bit later on to see if he can get the win. We'll see you then. Goodbye.